You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth! Son, we live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with guns. Who's gonna do it? You? I have a great responsibility, possibly that. I would rather you just said thank you and went on your way. Otherwise, I stand opposed. Either way, I don't give a damn what you think you are entitled to.
Welcome. This is the Guillermo Moreno Show, and I am fortunate enough to be guest hosting for Guillermo, my boss here at the radio station. Now, I've got some big shoes to fill, and I brought on a couple people because maybe between the three of us, we can fit into those shoes. Now, I'm not going to say they're clown shoes, but they are very big shoes. Today, first we're going to start talking about Fresno Unified. We're going to go the full 3 hours. I hope it's informative. I hope it's fun. I don't quite run at the rapid pace that my boss, Guillermo, the Big Cheese, El Queso Grande, operates at, but I think it'll be fun. First person I want to introduce, kind of nice enough to come on with me. I think Sean will probably be doing this kind of thing on his own without me soon. Sean Burdine, welcome.
Be here.
And then I brought on somebody that is all about Fresno Unified and saving the kids, and that is my friend Tammy Gorins.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here, and I am so excited.
Absolutely. So we're starting with Fresno Unified because I think it's one of the biggest single problems in our entire county. It produces more kids that don't much of anything. They're not qualified to go get a job. But Tammy, first of all, why are you running?
That's a loaded question. I came from a district, Lemoore Union Elementary School District, which I worked in for 35 years. We have a motto called Each One, and it means that we will go to any length to make our kids first. So with that kind of mindset, I've attended Fresno board meetings for the last year.
I'm sorry.
They're
painful, aren't they?
I've talked to the people, and they don't care about what I have to say or countless others. So the next indicated thing to do was to run for Trustee Area 3, the Sunnyside District, to bring unity, not division, unity, to make our kids first, not in what we say, but what we do. And so I decided to run because that's the next indicated thing to do. Next step.
Well, thank you for stepping up. So, Sean, I know you've been paying attention to this same battle. What do you know about the district? Because we kind of got to define what's going on there.
Bottom line. I don't mean that by giving them the F's that they that's
No, they're great inflation.
not teaching ready for society, ready
College,
for a job,
just a job.
At this point, this is honestly like a public.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but nationwide, Fresno Unified is known as being one of the most radical districts. So they are on the map nationwide. They have that reputation. I would not think that was.
So radical meaning they're not focused on education and the basics?
Absolutely the most political. That's why I would speak to Fresno Unified, and I would talk to them about need to take your politics out of education, and they don't care. They do things because they can, not because it's what's best for kids.
And they brag about that sometimes.
I see a lot of pride, and I see a lot of division, and each person, it's like my people, power for my people. This person is power for my people, power for my people. And I believe in equality for us all in equal opportunity.
So they
And
see race first.
100%. Except for
How does how are they? How does this?
okay. Well, I went to a California for Equal Rights conference 6 weeks ago, and I learned a lot of things. There are many trustees, and Dr. Wenyan Wu is the head of California for Equal Rights. And the ethnic studies I learned, these are things that people just don't know. In 2019, ethnic studies went before Gavin Newsom. It was anti-Semitic, and it was very, very bad, and it was rejected. Even Gavin Newsom said this will never see the light of day. Then they did a couple edits, and it went through, and then Gavin Newsom said, yes, it's wonderful, and now it's a graduation requirement. But what the people do not know is that the big districts like Fresno Unified have adopted liberated ethnic studies, which has anti-Semitic in it, critical race theory, dividing us by our races. And if you go with the liberated ethnic studies, you are going to have people hating each other by their races. And we do not need that. We need to teach history absolutely, accurately.
And embrace various cultures, but that doesn't mean that you have to take it to politics.
Right. And let's not teach our students to blame and hate each other and be resentful. I see, you know what I see on the board when I see them every day? I'm so glad they make us wait till the end to speak because it's been a blessing. It's almost like it's been a blessing because I hear them speak. And I'm like, wow,
Well,
you guys are not nice.
they're not nice. And people of color, black and brown people, diversity, equity, inclusion. They don't actually say the word communism, but I kind of think a lot of common ground there.
Well, I'm a school teacher, and 5 years ago, they talked about equity. So I was like, all right, because new fads come along all the time. So I'm like, all right, equity, it sounds good. Kids get what they need. So if you have a special needs student, they have special supports, hearing impaired, special supports, English is a second language, special supports. But then all of a sudden, 2 years ago, equity means equal outcomes. So now Valerie Davis is like, yes, 86% of our kids are graduating. We're so proud. But if 9% are at grade level in math and 17% only are at grade level in reading, you are basically giving kids a fraudulent certificate.
I want to point out those numbers are post-COVID from the district website.
And then,
The district themselves.
right,
These numbers.
right.
This isn't even,
No.
This is directly
No.
from the district.
Mhm.
And then they'll say, oh, it's because of COVID. Well, in the fall of 2020, the American Pediatrics said opening schools was safe. The next day, the union said, I double dog dare you. A couple days later, Gavin Newsom said, we're closed. A couple days later, Bob Nelson came out with his video saying, we're closed. Now, I taught in my district Zoom for 2 months.
So you worked in a district that was not Fresno Unified, though you live in the Sunnyside area.
Every day, my school, November 1st, opened 2020 safely. All lived. We followed all guidelines. We had everything we need because my district did whatever it took. I drove by Easterby. I drove by Sunnyside while I was teaching one of my special needs students how to throw a frisbee. And we were doing butterfly houses with the larvae and the chrysalis, and we released them into the air. I did so many fun things that year because I knew the kids were really hurting. We talked a lot. So Fresno Unified robbed their kids of the right to an education because of big interest money.
Absolutely. I want to point out that the problems with Fresno Unified don't have to do with money. It is a budget that is approximately $2 billion. It is more than the city of Fresno. 11,000 employees, roughly, 72,000 students. Isn't that a scary thought?
They're top heavy.
Superintendent.
No, it's a little over 4.
A little over 4 now. Wow.
Yeah, he
I
got.
heard it was,
He's doing.
that's that's the thing. Where I think good money. So if money is a problem, the school district has this realistically. What really are the big mentality? What do you think really?
That's a loaded question.
I know there's a lot.
There's a whole show in that question.
I mean, there's a lot right there.
That's a loaded question. Where do I begin?
Wherever you want.
Well, I think that they are. Well, we were talking about I went to the LCAP meeting last night in Sunnyside, and well, LCAP is I don't know the exact words, but it's all the money. It's where they're going to spend all the money they have.
So it's their financial plan, essentially.
Their financial plan. Well, what they do. This is kind of
how to go.
I don't want to be cynical because I'm kind of a Pollyanna, and it is time for positive change. So I'm coming in for positive change, but you do have to identify the problem before you can come up with a positive change solution. So they had like 800 pages that the people didn't see. The people saw a little pamphlet. They gave them free food, and then they had all these cameras. Like, so what I saw is that it's 800. It's already spent, and it's already divvied out. And so I think it's kind of like, all right, we want to hear from you. We've already made our decision. We've already got the money spent, but we want to hear from you so we can say we heard from you, and we could say you have input. But there were people that were very unhappy because they have a program that is segregates our kids. So it's only for one race. So there were people that were resentful because they were like, there was a wonderful, beautiful woman who was a Native American that said almost 4 million is going into this G4 program. What about my people? And then there was another woman that said, well, what about my people? So
that's a legitimate point, but that's very shaky ground. If we approach it that way, all it does is divide us.
Well, exactly. So don't we need equality of opportunity? We can preach equity, but if you don't give everybody what they need and you only give, so they're saying that this one group of people by their race are low, but what about all the other? I mean, hold on a second. 9% math, 17% reading. That's just not all that one group. Why not everybody who has a need, suffers, gets what they need? How about that?
I want to put something in perspective. So those are horrible post-COVID numbers, but the district wasn't doing well beforehand. They were at 38% reading proficient and 30% math proficient in the district before COVID, before the utter disaster of COVID. So they were truly a failing school district beforehand. The person you're running against was on the board when this was essentially a reasonably in the middle of the pack, okay school district. She has presided over its demise, yet believes she needs to be re-elected.
18 years ago, when Valerie Davis came on board, Fresno Unified was in the middle of a bell-shaped curve nationwide. And then presently, they're in the bottom 5%. What are they compared to? What city?
Detroit.
All right.
We're better than Detroit. We got to be proud.
So come on.
There's no others.
Come on, Valerie Davis. Give someone else a chance to come up. Take the torch. Give me a chance. Let me serve the people. She spoke at the LCAP last night. She's very nice. She's my neighbor. We're both grandmothers. I care for her. I just think that I can do a better job. And it's time for positive change. But she spoke and left right after she spoke.
Wait, she didn't talk to the people?
No. Absolutely not. because there were very upset parents. And so I went and talked to the people who were upset. And I had people that walked out with me and I spoke to them. I want to serve the people. I want so excited to serve the people. I do not want to be a career politician. I want to walk my walk, not talk the talk.
Sean, I know that when you were at Fresno City College, you had an experience with what they had to do to deal with kids that were not prepared for college classes. You want to tell that story because that totally ties into Fresno Unified.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can touch on that. So after I graduated, very involved there. As part of that, they have aspects of students, and also I was involved in a few basic skills. No longer a thing because they had a new program, AB7. Back to that number. Basic Skills Committee was designed to make it enough ready for college. Thing that year after year, not enough high school had to keep allocating more away from the at high school level math and after year. Of course, that's not a so now the colleges. This is something I really want to do a deep dive on. Of that idea. We have a large, several thousand students, elementary math, English, not even high school. What do you think there's in being that how do we fix that? What do we do? Like the create a bridge.
Obviously, you got to start with the young kids.
Well, that's great because I taught first, second, and third grade and then 5 years of special education. So if a child is not reading by the third grade, their chances are pretty dismal. So our district, the last few years that I was, they have different fads. They're like whole language, whole class learning, blah, blah, blah. Finally, our district got back to phonemic awareness, phonics. I mean, drill, get these kids reading, guided reading, small groups. We would test the students on a skill, and the ones that didn't get it, we had to reteach it. And so reading, basics, same with math. So we need to treat this as the emergency, the critical emergency that it is. So stop being social justice warriors, ladies.
And gentlemen. And Andy Levine.
Yeah, I don't know much about him. I hear a lot of, well, I don't want to be disparaging, but it sounds like word salad. Let's get back to the basics. Come on, we're in an emergency. Let's treat it like it is.
I've only board members talk about learning loss. I know that I have.
Never.
It's astonishing.
I've been to 25. You've been to somewhere in that range too. Never.
My experience is always that elephant. Not to address it. Not to
Nope.
about it.
Right.
They'd much rather talk about the building renovations
Nope.
and event, but
Nope.
never about it.
Nope.
So I have a question. How do you start? How do you actually
Vote different. Get people on the board that are not going to divide us. We're going to make kids first. We're going to treat academic fluency as the emergency that it is. Stop being political and focus on the kids, period.
Even if somebody is political, they should be able to set that aside and focus on the basics for the kids. I know of multiple candidates running in this voting period for Fresno Unified, and we need some change.
Well, I'm a professional, so for 35 years, I love saying that I'm old school because for 35 years, I am a believer in Jesus Christ. I'm a Christian, but I was professional. No one knew what my faith was. No one knew what president I liked or disliked. No one knew what political, no one knew that. So we are politically neutral. There's one flag that should be in the classroom. It's the United States flag.
I can think of a second one. We could have the California flag.
California.
But after that.
Yeah, California makes sense as well. But, and so inclusion is that flag. The only flag you need to fly for inclusion is USA, because you know what? Give me you're tired, you're weary, you're poor. We have an Equality Act that is not supposed to discriminate. We have a Disabilities Act that's not supposed to discriminate. That flag unites us all. So stop playing these silly games and let's teach our kids.
There was a survey that just came through. We're going to go to break pretty soon, but minute and a half, can we get through the survey?
Kind of frame it. The bottom line is find out feeling of the parents is well. The bottom line, about 2/3 respondents to the survey about 80% good that they felt satisfied with not only the education but the
Okay, I have questions. How many parents are in Fresno Unified and how many answered the survey?
Near nothing. 1%.
Then it's
maybe,
not valid.
Maybe 3%.
Then that data is not a fair representation of the people of Fresno Unified.
And you can bet that most of those parents, I would be willing to bet, are the parents that are very engaged with their children's lives. Almost all of those parents have kids that are going to the magnet schools, the AP
PTA
schools.
PTA moms.
Mm-hmm. So,
Okay.
Jeremy, we're going to go ahead and go to the break. This is Eric Rollins, live, guest hosting for the Guillermo Moreno Show.
The Guillermo Moreno Show on the best talk in
town.
1550 KXEX.
Pretty cool.
Write it down.
Okay, so we're still on social media. Not quite sure how long our break is.
Have I been quiet? What? Okay. We can do that. Is that better? Okay. Nope. All good. Want to make sure it's all going okay.
All right.
Okay.
So when we come back, we'll kind of flesh out what's going on with that survey. And then after that, I kind of want to jump into Fresno Unified wants equity grade. They desperately want it. And I think there's a reason why they desperately want it. And that's because it is a new tool to hide their failures, which is kind of sad.
My follow-up question is going to be with parents to get them more interested. So,
Well, you're going out knocking on doors.
Right.
You have a unique insight to that question. What are they telling you? Think about what they're telling you. You don't have to tell us right this minute. But
I'm not getting answers. I'm getting answers about like they're ready for a change, so that they don't like Valerie Davis. I know they're not happy. They know that the district is divided. They are not happy with the content of their character. I can tell you that. But I don't know about the survey. How do you get more?
Well, if you're, for instance, you're going out and actually talking to parents, I think that somebody has to reach out to them, whether that's the principal, the teacher, or frankly, the superintendent should be reaching out. You know, you have to take the first step. If you have
them fill it out when they came for food yesterday.
Yeah.
At the LCAP.
So what number of students, excuse me, not students, but parents came to the
Well,
Was
it was
it-
very confusing. There were a bunch of cameras, which I think they were trying to say, like, film it like they can show that at the next board meeting. Kind of like propaganda. I thought it was propaganda. And but there were some outside reporters, and then a bunch of people in that meeting last night were staff. And the woman that is Native American, she tried. Many of those people make 1,000. They were highly paid.
Have any idea what the average income in the district is of parents? I know it's not tremendous. I've heard this stat, but I just can't remember. It was under $40,000.
Yeah,
and with a family, it's pretty
yeah,
tough.
it's very. They are many poor.
I think that was also average household.
That's a scary thought.
Low.
It's low. But even 40 is a scary thought in California with our cost of living.
Don't quote me.
Well, I'm hoping that like we're just about to come back. We're just waiting for the music.
I do know it.
Ooh. Oh,
The
yeah.
Guillermo Moreno Show on the best talk in town. 1550 KXEX. Write it down.
No wonder Guillermo has all this energy. He gets charged up with each break. This is Eric Rollins. I am guest hosting for Guillermo Moreno. And we're talking about Fresno schools. I am joined by Sean Burdine and Tammy Gorins.
Hello.
Tammy is decided to step up and do something exciting, something that I wish more people would be willing to do, which is run for office. We need servants. There's too many politicians that believe that they're there for, or they're simply there for themselves. They're great singers, but they can only hit that one note. Me, 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 me.
A lot of that on
Yep.
I want to be of service. I want to have a servant's heart. I want to serve the people, serve the students. I want to serve the teachers and staff, but only in regards to how can we help the students best they can.
So Sean had a question for you.
Okay.
Yeah. Before the break there, we were talking about the survey sent out to Fresno Unified parents and asking for their feedback. The bottom line is about 2/3 doing excellent, and only about 80% said that they are, well, about 80% said that they were receiving adequate or better communication. As was pointed out, there was only 773 respondents out of about 72,000 students. We can kind of do some rough math on how many parents that might be between, single parent households and all of that. A very small number of respondents, and the ones that did respond seem to be good about the situation. But my question really comes down to is just, how do you reach out to a lot of the parents that are not responding to that? How do you get them more engaged? How do you kind of talk to them and help them to sort of what problems you're seeing and why they should be involved with that. And what does that kind of look like? How do you talk to those parents? What more?
Yeah, I don't know what schools those surveys came from. I don't know. I don't know the data, so I don't know who responded, and I don't know what if it was certain schools that are very highly involved.
Well, the survey was district wide, and it was one of the things that at the meeting, Trustee Sladek did point out that per school is a very small number. It was intended to sort of be like a broad strokes thing across the entire district. We can point out that it is a very small amount of data, statistics on it. Technically, it is enough to sufficient to be statistically significant if we're looking at the broad strokes. But there's a quote that I always like coming back to from Mark Twain of there's kinds of lies, damned lies, and statistics. So it's just kind of like how they might have. I mean, there's a lot of questions on how this data comes through, but if there's less than 1,000 parents that actually responded to this survey,
Out of how many thousand?
there's about 72,000 students.
We're not sure how many parents.
We're not sure how many parents, but
So 1%.
1% if there was one parent for each student. Now, some of it's going to be households, so that's not exactly
So
right. But
so that data is not valid data.
well, but my concern though is why are there not more parents speaking up? Why? I mean, I've been to a lot of these board meetings, I've been to a lot of these other things, and it feels like I see a lot of the same faces that are very committed, but I don't see a lot of people. I don't if there's not a lot of people directly responding to this. If Fresno Unified's in this sort of state that it is, there are more parents that seem to be engaged, and how do we get them engaged?
Well, I know. I was a parent. I worked all through the years of raising. They are 34 and 31 now, and working full time. And if you got two parents working full time, you've got. It is hard to make ends meet right now. It is hard. I believe that parents and they get a lot of forms thrown, tons of forms, especially at the beginning of the year. And so it's just another, and it's overwhelming. Parents are like, how am I going to pay my electricity bill? And how am I going to feed my children? And how am I going to get them to school and get these at this school and that school and work? So to me, that's be overwhelming to them.
Well, do you think that those parents are aware of the situation then, and maybe that's why they don't want to respond either? They don't necessarily want to say
They
bad
don't know.
things.
They
You
don't know
think
what's going on. No, I don't.
Why not?
Because I don't think the district is transparent with what's like the father that complained last night at the LCAP. There's a bunch of books that are in the library that are political and controversial, and he started reading from one of them about shake your booty and all this kind of stuff. And the parents were like, and the books got passed around, and the parents looked, and they were disturbed.
and they're very age inappropriate.
Yes, they're political. They're teaching kids that when you're 5, kids decide who they are. Kids decide what gender they are. It's putting ideas into kids' heads. So if a child there's a tom girl, or they come from a broken home and their heart is broken, they might think, hey, you might be, if you're uncomfortable with yourself, you might be in the wrong body. All this ideology, most people, I don't know, what is the percentage of people that do not believe in that? I believe in live and let live. Love people, live your lives, that kind of thing, but don't put ideology that's controversial into our schools. But they said, the lady spoke last night, the one in charge, Tammy, and she said, we're doing this to be inclusive. But the father says that you're discriminating against people who don't believe in that. And if you do believe in inclusion, start saying Merry Christmas, and let's get a major in the library at Christmas time. All right? And let's sing Oh Little Town of Bethlehem. And we could do some Kwanzaa songs, and we can do some do Christmas around the world. But I mean, if you're going to embrace everybody, you're opening up all right.
It almost becomes hypocritical. Like, I mean, when you try
It's
to...
a lie.
Well, because, I mean, I think it might have been the same parent that spoke at the last board meeting. I thought that he made excellent point. Basically, you're saying you're being inclusive to these things, at the same time by being inclusive those things, you're no longer being inclusive to
Why you're not
Christian
supposed
students,
to
Muslim students.
bring politics into the schools. I had a child who later transitioned when they became an adult, and you love kids. You love all kids that come to you. But we do not promote ideology that's controversial.
Well, I think they're about to try to revamp grading. So there's a book called Grading for Equity. It is by Joel Feldman. I read most of the book. They've already sent people off to attend seminars about this. The board has, and the district has. And really what it wants to do is, instead of holding all kids accountable and teaching them the basics, it's, well, you have this disadvantage. Let's say it's a single parent home and English is a second language. And then they give you points by race. All of those would apply towards your grade. And they want that desperately in Fresno Unified. All it is, I see, is a way to hide the fact that they are failing a large portion of the students. And it doesn't teach kids anything new.
But they will say they're not doing that. But let me just challenge you listeners out there. If teachers are being in service grading, and they are.
They are. That is a
What
fact.
are they preparing for? Plus, what you're already, there's people that cannot read and cannot do math. So if everybody gets a trophy, these kids are going to be, sorry, your kids are going to be living in your home for the rest of their lives because they don't have the tools.
Also, it wants to get rid of all homework. You can turn it in late. No penalty for turning it in late. This book really wants the student to be able to take the test a second time, a third time, a fifth time, a 10th time, and replace it with the best grade. Now, kind of an interesting concept, but is that the real world? All of us have had jobs. Can you imagine your employer gives you 5 tries getting it wrong, and then you get to keep the best one?
No, there's budgets, there's timelines, accountability is a thing.
I've been interviewing a bunch of people that are business owners and out there, and they're saying these kids don't know how to work. They're like, I'm sorry, I can't come to that training. I'm going through a hard time. It's not good for my mental health. So there is a lot of that going on. So no, we teach kids that you can do hard things. We push them. We have high expectations. This is just it's pitiful. It's pitiful. You're Fresno Unified, you're already on fire. Let's pour some gas on it. That's what equity grading is.
Yep. I see it as it's also kind of a tyranny of low expectations, as if because of somebody's color or the fact that they only have one parent, they can't rise above. I believe that they might need additional help, and that help should not be focused on their color, but on where is the need, which students are failing, get those students extra help.
Offer tutoring.
But no tyranny of low expectations.
When I taught, say that we were teaching main idea, and I have 3 other second grade teachers. So we would test them on main idea. We would create an assessment. We would test them. Say 8 students did not get main idea. They did not pass the test. The only time we looked for someone that would looked at someone and put them aside, like segregated, like if they needed support. So English was a second language. Never in my 35 years of teaching did I go, oh, well, this race and that race, and oh, forget about, no, they were all our kids, and the kids that didn't get it, it was our job to reteach that and for them to get it.
So the ones that failed got extra help. What a crazy thought.
Yeah, I mean, our job, we had a mission. We had a mission, we had a job, and every child counted, and we never divided kids by what they looked like. Another thing, too, is isn't that kind of, are we not supposed to stereotype people? Like, are we supposed to put a whole swath of people and go, they're victims? That sounds like critical race theory to me.
Well, that is damaging to both the victims and to the supposed oppressors.
People will
it just divides us.
perform also to what you put them to. If you say, if I go to the kids, I go, boys and girls, you can be anything you want to be in life. You have to do the footwork, but you can reach your dreams, but you do have to do the footwork. Let's get busy. Your job right now is to learn. That is the mindset we teach our kids. I was listening to this man in the Bronx in New York City. It's a charter school, and he is in charge of the charter school. And there are parents that are fighting to get into this charter school.
I've heard Thomas Sowell talk about this school.
Okay. And you high expectations for these kids. And guess what you tell them? You were born for this. You were made for this. And this is what you're going to do. And this is the footwork for you. So
and you have to work hard.
Footwork.
And if you don't, there's consequences.
Footwork.
Yeah, it reminds me too, something that I'm seeing and hearing more, kind of like the trend of getting away from telling kids that they're smart and tell them simply that, you got that because, you are hard, that you earned that. It wasn't just because of something that naturally smart, because of how that kind of shapes the mentality. And I think it's such a huge thing that's happening in elementary schools, especially in high schools. It's that complex, just telling kids that there's all these things in the world that'll make it so that, and so they're always looking for outside blame.
Another thing I talk to kids about too is that they hear this. My best lessons in life, and I teach kids, it's okay to fail. It's okay to not know. It's okay to mess up. Our best lessons are when we have fallen down and skinned our knees and we get back up. Failing is where we rise up and we move on and we learn. That. So that equity is it's fraud. It's fraudulent.
Yeah.
Fraudulent.
So you'd be a vote against it.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Well, I got a question on that though. What happens when Sacramento says you need to adopt these programs? Because a lot of these programs are starting, it's not just being adopted willfully in some school districts, it's being forcefully mandated.
Doesn't need to be in Fresno Unified, though. But
Well,
I think what he's asking is, do you have the strength? What will you stand against?
When Sacramento tries to say, well, we're going to fine your school district if you don't adopt it.
Okay, let me give you an example.
Yeah.
I talked to one of the board members of Lemoore High. Lemoore High, if someone is violent, they get suspended. All right? Hanford has a beautiful, kind of like Fresno Unified, beautiful, spotless record. No one misbehaved. Hanford, everything's perfect. Valerie Davis said we had 0 suspensions the last 3 months of last year, 10,000 kids. Well, I have something to say about that. You're hiding something.
Yeah.
So, anyway, this board member from Lemoore, because they do suspend, when it is appropriate. And so the dashboard, they look bad. And so she was, yeah. So anyway, it's for looks.
We're going to go ahead and take a break.
Okay.
This is Eric Rollins here on KXEX, subbing for Guillermo Moreno. So when we come back,
The Guillermo Moreno Show on the best talk
I wanted to go
in
ahead
town,
and talk about
1550
what you think of the
KXEX.
idea of removing cell phones from schools.
All
So
right.
you don't have to tell me now, just think about what would you say? Is that a useful teaching tool? And 3 minutes break. This is so multifaceted. This district is a failure on multiple levels.
All of the levels.
Yeah.
All of them. Like, I mean, that's one of the hard things, like having conversations about this in an honest sort of way, is just because, seriously, like, where do you even start? Like, how do you unravel this?
Daunting.
You need a school board because they're the lead. The school board has the ability to hire and fire the superintendent, who is in charge of implementing their vision, taking their blueprint and turning it into action. I don't know whether Nelson needs to go, but he's been an abysmal failure and truly great at maintaining and preserving his job. That's the one thing he has true skills.
I'm going to tell you a funny story. One of a colleague was going door to door, and the person said, "I will not vote for you unless you fire Nelson."
Yeah.
They said. So the people know. I mean, the people, they see. People are smart. People know what's going on.
Well, that's one thing I think we'll probably talk about more today. More and more. I really, as things continue to get worse, you can't hide. Reality is going to be reality. You can try ignoring it up to a point, and as things get worse, we need to acknowledge that this is bad. I still feel like there's that school district.
All that propaganda. Like the cameras were in the LCAP meeting yesterday. So they were in the LCAP meeting so they can document that we spoke to the people and they love our plan and we've already got it all allocated and they all agree.
Well, the most participation I've ever seen at a Fresno Unified School Board meeting was 100 people.
Well, I was there the night the Faulkner name was changed and it was packed.
It was packed, but I still don't think it was much over 100 people.
It's a small room.
It's a fairly small room.
In the
Yes,
the
in the
main
downtown
building.
I don't know the count on the, but it was less than 200. I'm confident of that. If you've got 72,000 students, wouldn't it be reasonable to think that you have more than 20,000 parents? That's assuming they have more than one kid.
Yeah, it's sad.
That's almost 2.5 kids. That doesn't even include grandmothers and anybody else from the community that wanted to get involved.
Another thing in my district is
So we're just about to come back. Okay, we're about 10 seconds away.
Picked up on his message.
all,
40 seconds
all
then.
principals, all principals and staff in our school district had to be.
What a crazy thought.
Yeah, so Fresno Unified has how many schools? 14 in my district.
Think of 14 times 7.
So all the principals
Roughly.
and all the principals and learning coordinators should
At least make some of them. I don't see any staff outside of very established staff
our staff
at those meetings.
our staff
Over 100. Lack of involvement.
And we're back.
nice music.
Absolutely.
The Guillermo Moreno Show on the best talk in town. 1550
Best talk in town.
KXEX. Write it down.
Guillermo knows how to rock.
I love Guillermo.
Same here.
Oh yeah, no, he's fantastic. I love what he's doing with this. It's
Yes.
very fortunate to allow us on today.
Oh,
Absolutely.
absolutely. I consider it a privilege to try to fill those giant shoes. Guillermo
Thank
isn't
you,
a very tall
Guillermo.
guy, but I tell you what,
You're a good
if
man.
you see his footprints in the mud, oh my God, his feet are big.
Huge.
Well, this is Eric Rollins subbing for Guillermo Moreno. We're down to about 4.5 minutes. I want to briefly talk about what's happening with Bullard High, and would that be something you'd want to see for the whole district, where they're putting cell phones in bags and so kids are not distracted by their cell phones? Where do you stand?
All right. My husband was a substitute teacher for Fresno Unified, and he would go in the room and no one would put them because kids do. I don't like the word cell phone bans. It kind of sounds like how the Fresno Bee, I said we needed SRO officers on campus, and they said armed police. She wants armed police. Cell phone bans is just a way of making it sound like, oh my gosh, they're being deprived. No, how about we help you learn? I call it cell phone boundaries. I've been in restaurants. My husband and I, we put our cell phones away, and we have watched the whole room, families, not talking to each other. If people, and we're treating learning as the emergency that it is, then let's give some boundaries to our kids who are literally addicted to their phones.
Mm-hmm.
It's an addiction. You do know that's like a computer. They can get on pornography. They can go anywhere they want. S&M. They can go to any dark place on the internet, and they're just giving it. Parents don't even know that. Parents don't even know that little 7, 8. They had to sandbox one of my kids' computers one year because they were trying to get on porn in the 2nd grade. So
Wow.
cell phones is a very that's serious. This is serious stuff. This is not talked about. Cell phones are that principal at Bullard who wants that school to be top notch, kids high levels of learning. This is how we're going to get there. This is my vision. Good for you. I support principals who do, I'll call it cell phone boundaries. Yeah, put your phones away and let's learn. That's my I'm strong
good with
on
that.
Yeah. No, that's how it was when I went to school. Like, cause I was going with, cell phones. I was still in the age where it's like during class. No, you're not even supposed to have it out afterwards. They made accommodations for lunch or, whatever, but in the classroom, we're not out. I mean, it's astounding to me that, but it goes back to like we were kind of talking about a couple minutes ago, just the lack of discipline present in the district.
And are we preparing them for the real world? Because they're going to get a job and they're going to be told, put your phone away. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, that's not good for my mental health. I think I'll quit and live with mom a few more years. Come on. We need to raise strong, passionate. We need to raise strong people that are going to go out in the world and they're going to have to be like, yeah, okay, that's the real. Share one story real quick.
We're down to about 1:40.
Quick. One year, my principal said, no drinks at parent-teacher conferences. I'm like, here I am. I'm like, that's the most ridiculous rule I ever heard. But that's my boss. He gave me a directive. My job is to listen to him and do what I'm asked to do. That's life.
So, Tammy, we're down to just over a minute.
Okay.
Why are you hopeful? Why are you doing this? And if people want to know more about you, what is your contact info?
Okay. My website is Tammy Mac, TAMMYMAC, the number 4 FUSD.com. I'm on Facebook, and I know I'm being trolled by certain outlets because they pop up, and I'm like, oh, they're checking me out. So Trustee Area 3, Tammy McMahon Gorins. I'm putting a lot of things there, and my cell phone is 559-904-3566. I always gave my cell phone to parents. I always was, and so please call me, ask me questions. I am here running because if not, who? If not now, when? The time is now. Oh my gosh, it's an emergency. If we don't step up, and let me tell you, there are thousands across California state who are stepping up because our schools are in bad shape.
We are definitely, it's time to act.
I'm so grateful that you guys included me today.
Well, thank you for running.
Thank you so much.
This is Eric Rollins subbing for Guillermo Moreno here on the best talk in town, 1550 KXEX. I thank you, folks.
Thank you. Time for positive change.
Absolutely. So for the social media, give your info one more time. Contact info one more time.
Tammy Mac, TAMMYMAC, the number 4 FUSD.com, and Tammy McMahon Gorins for Trustee Area 3 on Facebook.
Tammy, I thank you for this time.
Been fun. Thank you. What an honor.
Honor is ours. We both appreciate you stepping up. Want to make a difference, folks. You need to get involved. Voting is a great place to start. I see it as a start, not an end point. If you want to change this country, you want to preserve this amazing experiment, this beacon for the world that we have.
If you are a parent and any of the schools, try showing up. You at least look at the agendas, watch the videos online. Even if you can't make it that night, most of the districts, especially Clovis, have them posted. What's happening on the pulse of what your representatives are thinking do.
You can find the board meetings online.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You can watch them live streamed at Fresno Unified, and Clovis, because they only sort of want your input, has decided that there should be a delay, even though they're a high-tech technology school that could totally afford to live stream it. And they gave some lame excuses about that. Oh, well, how convenient.
The other night, I just put an earbud in my ear, and you can just like have it right there, and then if it's something that you really want to pay attention to, you can make your dinner and listen to the meeting and know what's going on.
Hey,
Hear what they're saying.
I think that's one of the biggest things, and that's one of the things that's been eye-opening. Look at an agenda, stuff they're going through. You look at the minutes, and that's the rough breakdown of what was the action that was taken. But it's so much different to actually be in the room or watch the video and hear what they actually say. That the facial, the faces they make, is how they act.
We'll learn about their content of character.
We're going to start in just about another minute.
Okay.
I'm not kicking you out, but
Testing.
Yep.
I have a mic now. So
Yeah.
we have about 3 minutes left.
oh, okay, we got
Minus
more.
10 seconds.
Okay. Should be. Should, yeah, it should be. Local control.
Scoot over. Okay, Jeremy, if I scoot over, so I'm at a better angle here. The TVs get very distracting. I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff that's been going on over here.
He wants to switch to that.
Yeah, okay. Do I need to turn this headset off at all?
Just shift slightly. Oh, I don't doubt it for a second. Well, it's kind of like the cell phone. You know, when I only answered the cell phone because I had another candidate running for Fresno Unified that said, "Is this live?" And I thought, okay, you guys are talking. I will go ahead and answer this.
Quick test. Am I in a good spot? Do I need to move it? Where right there? A little closer? Okay. Is this good? Okay, cool. Cool.
Take a look there.
We're okay. That's the camera there.
Mhm.
All right. I think we're okay then. So as far as local start with.
That's kind of what I want to start with.
Okay.
Local control, and then
Okay. Local topic. Can we start kind of like
10
broad
minutes?
stroke? Okay.
Somewhere in that range. I'm not like married to an exact.
Well, because
1 minute?
Minute. Okay. We got there's. Okay, we can make it work. And then as far as getting into like the candidates and stuff, you're planning to go.
I was trying to do the whole thing, but I think the federal and state candidates are very quick. There's a couple to praise and largely to move on otherwise.
I mean, I was thinking about it, today and last night. I don't.
Agreed.
They're running.
Mhm.
They're probably better than the alternative.
Well, there's a couple cases like Secretary of not Secretary. Lance Christensen's running for Superintendent of
10
Public
seconds?
Instruction. Tony Thurman's awful.
On some of these.
5 seconds?
And we have launched.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
I love this every time I hear it.
Handle the
Oh,
truth.
that's such a great quote scene.
Yep.
It's fantastic.
Son, we live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with guns. Who's gonna do it? You? I have a great responsibility. possibly said, I would rather you just said thank you and went on your way. Otherwise, I stand opposed. Either way, I don't give a damn what you think you are entitled to.
Really kind of captures today, doesn't it?
Yep. Welcome. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist. I have another show on this station, but I am lucky enough to sit in this seat guest hosting for the great Guillermo Moreno. And today I am joined by Sean Burdine. This is hour 2. We're going to talk a little bit about local control because I think that it truly makes a difference. We spend all this time focusing on the president and the governor, and they do make a difference in our lives. But the everyday little things happen with local control, and then whether we have strong politicians to fight against them. I'd like to start with the tale of two cities. I call it the tale of two cities. Sitting in one that believed in tyranny, and I live in one that believed in freedom. And just because we had a different type of city council that believes differently, we had an incredibly different experience.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the things right now. It's astonishing living, right on that cusp of Fresno and Clovis, to see firsthand how different two different cities can manage themselves and what that really looks like, how it goes. For me, local control, I mean, it really is kind of the heart of how our republic is constructed. And so this is one of the most important issues to me in a lot of these elections going forward. So it's one of the things that I thought it was important to kind of talk about before we get into who I think people should vote for, because right now we need fighters. Mm-hmm. Our country is a constitutional republic. The republic was built with the idea of your representatives being close to your home. They would know how their home functions best. We can go back and forth on the philosophy of federalists, anti-federalists, John Jay versus Madison and Jefferson. I'm definitely in the Madison and Jeffersonian sort of camp on a lot of these ideas, but ultimately it still came back to the that we will govern ourselves by electing our neighbors to help represent us because they understand our issues. And what we've really seen, especially in the last several years, and then super accelerated with COVID, is just our central government, whether it be at the federal level or in our state with Sacramento, taking a massive overreach and trying to draw more and more power and authority back to them and away from our local governments and in turn us. Because the further that gets away from us, the less direct influence we have.
I see them as they don't consider themselves accountable to the voters.
No, I mean, especially not in a state like California, where they do have a supermajority and they can run over and just do almost whatever they want. I mean, the last few years, we can start with all the COVID, because, everybody remembers.
That was my great awakening to the power of local control.
Yeah, I think it was for a lot of people, honestly. Because you had governments that tried to, just say, no, this is what you must do, and stripped away your ability to say what you want to do, what you felt safe doing, what you felt comfortable doing.
It's like individual liberty disappeared, which is the basis of this great experiment of this great republic.
Oh, yeah, no, and that's one of the things that, it's honestly the thing that makes America unique compared to any other country, is that we have our constitutional rights that enshrine our God-given individual liberty. And in that span of time, I don't call it the pandemic, I call it the lockdown. This is the lockdown period, where they tried to say that we all had to stay in our homes, we couldn't go anywhere, we couldn't do anything, and they tried taking everything from us. We couldn't even talk to each other. It breaks so many things, and I'm not sure how many people have been following a lot of legislation that's been coming through from our state, but, there's been some pushback. But some of these bills, assembly bills and Senate bills that have been coming through are really, they're using COVID as a reason to take more and more of this away from us. I think one of the ones I really want to talk about just for a moment and, talk about some of the others, but it's AB 2030. Well, no, AB 2098. Is the one that makes it so doctors are no longer able to have a separate professional opinion from whatever the CDC or official government mandates.
Yes, but the CDC got everything about COVID 100% right.
Yeah, I know. The longer we get from it, the further back, and we start seeing how much they've changed their narrative and stories. And they had it all right. This one is scary, folks. This one did go through. This one passed the Assembly, the Senate. It was signed last month by our governor that says that
Governor King.
Yeah, in his mind.
This is Gavanzuela, isn't it?
No, that's clever. I haven't heard that one before, but no, that's where we're at. Is the governor is now signing away doctors' ability to say, they have a professional opinion. They must toe the official government narrative. 2030, which I brought up, was one that actually was punitive to Fresno County.
Mm-hmm.
I was very involved.
This one's scary.
This one is also scary. This one affects directly how our county can govern itself. During the redistricting process that happens after every census, counties go through, redraw their lines based on new census data, new census information. We did everything above board, did everything legally. There was
and we had the right to make the choices we did.
We did. We absolutely did. What ended up happening, though, is we had a lot of these activist groups that were really protesting all along the way. And when they didn't get the maps that they wanted, that they felt were correct, they went to Joaquin Arambula, and he pushed a bill forward, which is AB 2030, that makes it now that in the next cycle, we will not have the ability to actually do our own redistricting, and that it'll be an outside commission that makes those decisions for us. There was an ability that we have that's now been taken away from it.
Maybe.
Potentially. It's
the fact that they even had the nerve to try. I think it's going to court, and because we've got almost 10 years before that census, maybe the courts will rule in our favor. But it is sad that they don't even care whether something is constitutional. They want their way. Right. They're about power.
Right.
And that's why I tend to refer to Gavin as King Gavin. By the way, his the state of emergency in the state and his emergency powers have been extended through January.
Yes.
Did you realize that California is still in a COVID emergency because those spineless cowards up in Sacramento are not willing to stand up to Gavin?
No, thank you for bringing that up, because I mean, at that point, again, we've seen what it looks like when a city says that they're going to do their thing or a county wants to do their thing, but the governor still is holding on to his emergency powers. He's saying he doesn't want to let that go, that we're still in a crisis and that he deserves extra powers in this time. It's the only way that we really kind of get out of this is people reasserting that, no, these are my constitutional rights. This is our jurisdiction. We have the ability to say that. We were talking to Tammy about school districts. There's all kinds of things that are getting pushed down into the school districts right now that are dictating what they have to include as far as their curriculum, the sort of language they're allowed to use, the language they are forced to use, what's included in their curriculum. It's all coming from Sacramento.
But there are districts that just said no.
Yes. And
King Gavin has not had the nerve to actually slap them. Paul Creighton, mayor of Atwater, declared his city a COVID sanctuary. Like a sanctuary city for illegals. And he said, we're not doing that. You want to wear a mask, fine. But we're not doing that. And he's the only city in Merced County that grew during COVID with no consequences. He is not the only example.
Right. And that's what we need more of. There's a couple more things that right now, one of the ones is the Affordable Housing Act. We've got another 10 bills that came through our state that now put more and more limits on what each county can do as far as building new homes and requiring a certain number of affordable housing, and without providing any sort of subsidies for building up the infrastructure or trying to make any of these work. It's all at the cost of the contractors or the city municipalities.
It is never at the cost of the contractors. It is ultimately to the cost of the end buyer.
Ultimately,
meaning it's going, whether it's affordable housing or not, even the affordable housing is going to be incredibly expensive. I want to point out that King Gavin decided it would be a good idea to build homes for the homeless. Now, I don't object to that concept, but for really a very, very minor, tiny micro home, he was spending more than $500,000 each. That's a scary thought.
Well, and that's the thing is, so many of these affordable homes end up not being affordable just because of everything that goes into building them and where they need to go. But our state does says, you got 8 years compliant.
Mhm.
And some of them also put in there where if you don't comply, you are then subject to potential lawsuits and actually
And loss of control.
loss of control. Absolutely. They then say that no, you no longer have the ability to write permit. And one more thing, this one blew my mind, was the Squaw Valley. So I don't know if anybody.
This one's painful.
In the last few weeks, I think it might have been at the end of last month or the start of this month, federal government has now decided that certain words are no longer going to be used on federal maps, including Squaw, because it's now deemed offensive. So what they've done now is for areas that have names like that, they are now going to change them. The residents of Squaw Valley were polled by our board of supervisors. 87% of the respondents said they did not want a name change. The board of supervisors are saying, well, it's too bad, guys. I'm sorry that you don't want this. It is unfortunate that they're doing this, but legally, we don't have the ability to fight. So Squaw Valley will probably have its name changed pretty soon to one of the more popular other options, Bear Valley.
Well, it is crazy to me that in a free country, that the federal government has the right to tell people what they should do. Well, I have multiple fingers on each one of these hands, and I can pick 2 of them that I would like to extend in thank you to both our federal and Bumblin' Biden and to King Gavin.
Well, and I think the biggest thing that we did learn from COVID, and we're still seeing it right now, is the only way to really, retain it is to fight for it. And that's why, I'm really looking for candidates that I believe, not only are they principled, but they're fighters. They understand that the only way we keep the values that we do is by fighting for it. And if you just put your hands up and say, well, it's unfortunate that's just what the higher ups above me want, guys, and they're not willing to put their neck out.
The higher ups, or the other big excuse was, well, the health department told me, and I'm too much of a spineless coward, supervisors, to act in very much. And some of them acted some, but mostly they went, oh, our hands are tied, we can't do a thing. Like, they lifted the state of emergency for the county, but then put 0 teeth in it.
That's one of the things that I do get disappointed and frustrated with them. I know that there's some fight there. There's not enough. We need
a pale shadow of enough.
Yeah, absolutely. We need our representatives to fight for us. They are our representatives, and not just let us all be steamrolled by whatever Sacramento or Washington.
Let's go ahead and jump into candidates.
Let's go.
First one is governor.
Okay.
It is no. If you have a piece of gum, you throw it in the trash. It is a better choice than Gavin Newsom. I'm not exactly thrilled about Brian Dahle, and he doesn't seem to campaign south of Sacramento. But Newsom's awful.
Yeah. No, this is one I wish I had more to say on. I mean, it's obviously Newsom's terrible. We all want him to go, but Brian Dahle, he is a state senator up north. I think District 1
near Reading.
He's at the top of the state, and from what I've heard and really understand about the situation is he rarely comes south of Sacramento. And if you have not heard his name yet, it's Brian Dahle. I don't really blame you, because it doesn't feel like he's really fighting or really running a campaign to try to win.
Right, and without shifting significantly either the Bay Area or LA, you're not going to win.
And I don't want it to sound totally hopeless, because if you look at the current state of our state, and right now I think there's a lot of people that are finding common ground where they haven't for the last few years. We're all looking at these skyrocketing gas prices, groceries keep going up. Doesn't matter how comfortable your life has been, it's getting more and more uncomfortable. And for a lot of people, it's gotten really tight. Doesn't matter which county you're from. I mean, we've watched all the videos of the crime skyrocketing in the Bay. I mean,
it's coming to you.
Yeah. And so all across the state, I think people are starting to recognize, like, a lot of these policies are not working. I don't know if this is the year that California really pushes back, but I do feel like the energy in the state is changing, and we're getting really close to enough people finally saying, okay, enough's enough.
Well, just a great instance, it's coming to you. Not only is this the crime, but homelessness is a thing in towns with 500 people.
I mean, these are small.
There's no
towns.
escape.
There's not. It's everywhere.
Let's go ahead and move on to Lieutenant Governor.
Okay.
I don't have really much to say about Angela Underwood Jacob, but Ellen Kuka, it's a Greek last name. I'm going to let you help me on that
It's
pronunciation.
okay. You're going to get close enough.
Okay. The Democrat who's the incumbent, she's a hardcore woke leftist. I don't know what else to say. She's not anywhere in the middle in any way, shape, or form. I've been told and I've listened to things, she is to the left of King Newsom.
Bad. I mean, this is one of those situations where I kind of run into where it's like, I am not like a hardcore partisan sort of person, but when it comes down to it, we start looking at what a lot of the Democrats are running on. It is just radical.
She is a radical of the radicals.
And see, that's the other thing too. So it's like, I want to see strong Republicans when we've got them, but if we just have something that's not a crazy radical Democrat, I mean, like that's still good right now. Like that's so it is going to be. We got some of those candidates where it's just like, I'm not super hyped or excited about them, but still better. Like definitely better.
Secretary of State Shirley Weber. She's really mostly drug her feet about cleaning the voter rolls. That's the biggest thing that concerns me.
Well,
I figured you'd have something to say about this.
I've got a lot I can say about Shirley Weber, but the bottom line is when we start looking at sort of the major architects of our current voting system and all
the vote by mail,
all the vote by mail stuff. I mean, so many of these policies that have come out in the last couple of years, and you know, a lot of the problems that came during the recent elections. Shirley Weber is one of those names that's got to be attached.
And I don't know a whole lot about Rob Bernowski. He was not my candidate. I had supported somebody else to be Secretary of State, but it would be pretty hard to do worse than Shirley.
It's an important spot. I mean, I had a couple of favorites running for that one, but you know, this is who we've got on our ballot.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I mean, we can also talk right now quickly. Like, this is why primaries are important. We did, you know, huge turnout in the primaries, but we split the votes up a lot. But these are the candidates we've got right now, and they're definitely better than the incumbents and a lot of the alternatives.
Yep. Next one I'm actually a little excited about. The controller could do huge things as far as auditing the state and bringing light to a lot of the corruption. For instance, we had the whole unemployment insurance fiasco that Newsom said, nothing's here. And that's about how much has happened. Well, if we got Lonnie Chen in, got the most votes in the primary, I think has a real chance of winning. Kind of a moderate, but you know, pretty good guy.
No, definitely a smart person too.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is somebody who could do a good job in that.
Let's go ahead. Moving on to.
Can we talk about one of my favorites?
Go ahead.
For treasurer.
Go ahead.
Jack Herrera. Now, if this is not a name,
I rarely hear you be excited about a candidate.
I rarely am, but he is one of those candidates because I had the real fortune of actually seeing him speak down in Orange County at the start of the year. And this is a position that people don't normally really think much about. Treasurer. It's an important one. I mean, that's
well, he could also do audits. He can make sure that we are doing what we say with the money.
Yes, you know, he actually follow it. I feel like this is a candidate that's the total package. Like a guy who really understands the issue, very charismatic. He's got great experience. I have nothing, just extremely positive things to say about Jack Herrera, and I hope he's able to do it because if he gets in there, I feel like he will fight. I have no doubt about that. That is a right warrior. So like, you get him in there, Jack Herrera for treasurer. I really wish I could say more positive things.
Attorney General, I don't know very much about Nathan Hotchman, but I know that Rob Bonta, he is quite willing to look the other way. It's a Democrat. I don't think he's a fair or honest man.
Tough. Yeah.
So far we're just recommending Republicans.
Well,
not with enthusiasm on all of them, but what you got to lose?
This is a really difficult situation I find myself I'm currently registered as a Republican, but I don't feel like our state or national party really represents me. And unfortunately, when it comes to the voting, not everybody I feel like is that strong enough, principled, conservative where I want them to be. But I think, we come together, we support the candidates that we want. We'll continue to see that change. Maybe we're going to have to see more gradual shift in our state, and some of these other candidates, maybe they'll lead to other positions, more power, more authority, more influence. Maybe we'll see some of the conversation to continue to shift.
So it's building our bench. If we got some of these people elected at a statewide office, they potentially could move up.
Well, yeah, and then they've got more influence to also help with the state level conversation.
The next one's not too exciting to people. Insurance commissioner. I don't even completely understand what this position is, but I know that when we had a Republican many years back, they were absolutely a voice for reason. And we don't have that now. So I'm going with Robert Howell. Board of Equalization. That's another position where at one time we had a Republican that regularly sent out, because I'm a small business owner, regularly sent out information in a way that was both useful and timely. I'm not so thrilled with the Board of Equalization now. It's not a bad organization, but I think it was better.
Well, I have had the chance to hear Ed Gaines speak a couple times, and I really like the chance to actually talk to him a little bit. And no, I think he's good. He's very good. The problem with that board, though, is like a lot of parts of our state, makes it really difficult. But very principled man, very smart man, very responsible.
The reason we're rattling through some of these bigger positions is because there's a lot more information. We will try to spend more time on local. I'm going to move to the Senate race.
Okay.
It is both a partial term and a full term. In both cases, I consider Mark Moiser to be better than Alex Padilla. By quite a lot, but I'm not exactly thrilled, but it's a step in the right direction. I do believe that Mark thoroughly believes in the First Amendment and thoroughly believes in freedom. He's just not as conservative as I'd like. But there's a foundation. If we have that much, that is dramatically better than Alex Padilla.
Yeah, I really don't want to. I mean, I brought up all the voting stuff, and if it's a name that belongs next to Weber for a lot of what we're seeing, Padilla. So much of his influence on how that worked out in we do not want him.
No.
We absolutely do. This is one of those ones too where, again, it's not like I'm going to sing high praises for Mark Moiser. I think he's also a very smart man. He's very successful in law, major lawsuit successes, legal law successes, a lot of these problems that we're facing, and we really not.
We're going to go ahead and take a break. I may have to steal some of these bumpers. Guillermo just rocks.
No, he's got some good ones. Keep the energy up. Got the fight.
The Guillermo Moreno Show on the best talk in town. 1550 KXEX. Write it down.
So we've got about 25, 642. I'm going to try to get through the rest of them, but we got to be a little faster. Like, there's nothing to say about it.
No.
He's going to win. And then I was going to finish what's on my ballot. Well, that's a little hard because my ballot doesn't include some of the other races where there are some congressional candidates that I actually am hopeful with. Michael Marr. McClintock.
I mean, okay.
I can't see that well enough to.
Okay.
I'd be wasting my time if I was to pretend that I can see that well enough. My eyes are really allergic right now.
Well, whichever ones you want to turn the ship today.
Well, McCarthy's going to win, just like Shannon Grove, who I love.
Oh,
She's going to win, but I don't know that we need to say very much. She's in a very positive district for her. She is generally loved, which is rare. Rarely can you use the word loved, and you've just talked to somebody that's a Democrat, moderate Republican, and a conservative Republican, and they're all like, she's great.
yeah, no,
Even the ones that disagree with her on some issues, they're still like, she's great.
yeah,
That's just a rare thing.
no, she's another candidate that absolutely package everything that you want to be representative. She's fantastic. I mean, she's incredibly knowledgeable. She's funny. She's charismatic. She's got great experience. She's got a great voting record.
She stands by her principles.
Absolutely, I have nothing but great things, positive things.
Even
1
when the
minute?
state party was not happy with her for endorsing certain candidates, she stuck by it. I have some insider knowledge on that. She went, I believe in this candidate, and she did not buckle to Jessica Patterson.
Good. That's what we need.
Yep.
Absolutely. That's what I'm talking about. I want more of those.
Mhm.
More people that say, no.
I'm principled.
Yes.
This is what I believe in, and I might not always agree, but certainly better than the alternative.
30 seconds.
Yep. Voice is dropping off, just so you know.
Yeah, I know. We're on. Yeah. It's
10 seconds.
Well, I look forward to talking about a couple of these candidates. I think for Congress,
The Guillermo Moreno Show on the best talk in town. 1550 KXEX. Write it down.
and this is Eric Rollins and Sean Burdine, and we are guest hosting for the great Guillermo Moreno.
hello.
And we're talking about the election, and we have a bit to say about quite a few of these candidates. There's a couple congressional candidates that I like. Tom McClintock, I got to watch speak. I thought he was very genuine. He was pretty clear in his positions, and he could articulate his ideas. And he didn't waver. He was strong. I think we got incredibly lucky that our local supervisor did not win. I believe the right person won.
Well, I don't know. It's one of those things though where, as product of the redistricting, I am now in McClintock's district. Last week was the first time that I've had the chance to hear him speak, and honestly, I had a really good impression. I think that
I've followed him for years.
he's got a great voting record, and I listening to him, knowledgeable. He seems to really appreciate the history, the context, very measured. I support him. Great.
Mhm. Another one is the dreaded Jim Costa, Chicken Jim, running against Michael Marr. And I say Chicken Jim because Jim Costa has a record, at least 4 times I'm aware of, where he agrees to a debate and then magically something happens and Jim never shows up.
Yeah, he's got a habit of that. But this is actually a race that I've become pretty excited about.
Mhm.
Because, in the beginning, I think when all the redistricting went through, this is Costa's district, it's blue. I think
It's
most people wrote it off.
Plus 16.
That's incredible. Those are
Plus
crazy
16
numbers.
Democrat. That's like a hill that you can't climb is what everybody tells you.
Right.
You want to talk about the poll that came out?
Well, they're in a dead heat now, apparently.
Absolutely.
It's amazing. And I think this is a matter of Californians are starting to really know that they need it. And Jim Costa, I mean, he's been representing the Valley for I don't know how many years at this point, but it does
44.
44. Yeah. I mean, but look how
But he's not an insider politician.
No, definitely not. Career, just getting that easy paycheck. And so it's one of those things where I think we actually do have a really good candidate here with Michael Marr. I think getting your name out there, getting that name recognition is a hard thing to do.
Mm-hmm. And he started from ground zero.
Yeah,
I was there. You were there. We were both there the first night he spoke.
Ah.
My goodness, this man has grown.
And
I have him on tomorrow on my regular show, The Constitutionalist, which is all on social media. That show will play on Saturday.
Well, and I've said it before. I mean, like some of these candidates, it doesn't feel like they're running a campaign to try to win. He
Mhm.
wants it.
No, he wants it.
He wants it.
He is offended by the idea that somebody who votes with Biden more than 90% of the time and doesn't get results is still in office. He's gotten a post office. That's a bill he wrote. And he's gotten a bill about the post office being able to sell stamps. That's it. I've listed all of Jim Costa's wonderful accomplishments.
No, like you said earlier, I can be a tough sell, but I really think that Michael Maher's is the real deal. I think that this is an individual, let's get him in office and see what he can do, because I think he can do great things. I really do. So I mean, I hope this momentum keeps going. He's on a great trajectory right now, and let's see some real change in this valley.
I want to go ahead and jump to school board. I know there's some other positions we didn't cover. And if we have time, we'll talk about judges, but I have such limited information on judges.
It's a hard one to do research on unless you get into the nitty-gritty of the law.
Yeah. Let's start with Fresno Unified and the McLean District, which is Karen Steed, Michelle Skiri, and the Queen of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, Viva Islas.
Yeah, she's got to go. Like, I mean, we were talking to Tammy earlier about what those school boards are like, and there is no doubt that he's the most woke radical on that board. Some of them, I think they definitely believe it. But no, that is...
She's the head of the dragon.
She's got to. I mean, she does not waste an opportunity to self-aggrandize and rant about how important these things are and all these sanctimonious virtues. It's a real thing, and I think
I've never heard her give a speech without working in people of color, black and brown people, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. She usually forgets that last part where I think she stands for big government. We could say communism, we could say authoritarianism, but you look at her approach, I think that's where she's at.
Well, she's definitely on board with all of the woke narrative, and that's the bottom line. I mean, and we were talking about earlier, like that's one of the roots of these problems that these people are running into. And so, if we really want to see meaningful change in that district,
there's only two options, because Carl Flores, no, that's the other district. There's only two options. It's either Michelle Skiri or Karen Steed. I like both of them personally. I know both of them. I've interviewed both of them. I think Karen might be a little more prepared to do the job. Michelle is much more dynamic. I'm leaning towards Karen, but there's not a bad choice. I just hope that people choose one and move in a direction, because I don't want them fighting against each other. They're actually united in the concept of anybody but Islas.
My only concern, because I think they're both great selections, I like both of them, but splitting the vote, because that's really, if we don't have a clear winner on that, it's very likely that it needs to slip by, and so that's my biggest concern. Just anytime we've got two people running for that same spot, it's going to split that.
And that is a real concern, because that district desperately needs the change. The next one's a lot easier. That's the Edison District. That is Keisha Thomas and Wayne Horton. So only two candidates in the whole district. Pretty simple.
The incumbent and Wayne. Yeah. Keisha's been an incumbent on that board. She's another one that, she's going along with a lot.
She's not long-term, though. She's fairly new.
Yeah. And she is fairly new.
But she's not trying to bring change. Both of us have been to a bunch of meetings, and she's, once in a while she has a question, but when it comes down to voting on anything woke, she's always in.
Yep. And we've had the opportunity to hear Wayne speak multiple times, and, this is definitely a very principled man who knows his stuff, who cares about the kids, who's willing to go the extra mile to make sure that, there's accountability. And that's really one of the things also that board and district really needs.
Wayne is strong and no nonsense.
No nonsense. Yeah. So I think, I'd love to see him on that board.
I'm truly hopeful that happens. Yeah. I will have him on October 27th. So he's coming in for an interview. I'm not sure when that one's playing on the radio, but you can find it on social media. The Constitutionalist at KXEX 1550. Sunnyside District. This one's also concerning to me because there's two candidates that I would have no problem with either one of them being elected to the board. Now, obviously, I love Tammy. Consider her a personal friend. She was just on with us in the first hour. I love her enthusiasm. I love the fact that she works. I appreciate the fact that she is one of the most caring, passionate people I know. And then you got Michael Osmer, who is a nice guy. I believe he cares about the kids. He's not as charismatic. He is a different personality. He is very steady. Both of them, I believe in their foundation and their principles, that they are principled people. But it worries me that we're splitting the vote.
And one thing I definitely want to say in favor for Tammy is, I mean, for the last, since really the lockdowns in 2020, I've started seeing Tammy at almost every event. You know, I see her regularly at school board meetings. She shows up. She wants to put the time and the work in, and since she started campaigning, you know, she's got that spirit, that energy where she wants to win.
It's not just that. She has grown tremendously. Yeah. You know, I was there the first time she spoke at a school board meeting, sitting next to her. I was there the first time she was on the radio. I was there the first time she went before a group and spoke. And at every step, while there were a few stumbles, she's consistently grown into the woman that we kind of saw today.
Well, she's not scared to push herself.
No.
You know, that's one of those things I've seen before is, you know, she's been anxious in the past when she does something new, but I mean, she pushes herself. She's not scared to try it. She's not scared to do it. She's not scared to make mistakes like she said before. She wants to do big things.
Right. And
that's important. Like, 'cause if you don't have that drive to keep pushing yourself, I don't think that this board can turn things around. You need somebody that wants to push themselves in order to make those.
Let's go ahead and move on to Clovis Unified, unless you have some final thoughts on Fresno.
No.
Okay.
That's fine.
Easiest race. Tiffany Madsen Stoker had nobody run against her, so nothing else to say. I hope Tiffany finds more strength, but generally I think she's been a pretty good trustee.
Yeah. I the only things that I could really criticize her on is not acting sooner, not being a bit bolder, but the general impression I've always had from her is that, you know, she listens to the parents, that she takes the parents' concerns very seriously. She is a mother in the district, and, you know, she seems very invested and devoted to it. So I don't see, you know, I don't have negative things to say other than, you know, I just want them,
find your strength.
You know, be confident. You know, I understand where a lot of that reluctance might come from, very uncertain times, potential lawsuits, but, you know, just fight, push back, take a hard stance, and the school district will support you.
Absolutely. There were several times when hundreds of people were there to support them getting rid of masks.
Yeah. No, that's one thing that I think really, I mean, we start getting into the difference between Fresno and Clovis. And the Clovis parents were very, very active during that lockdown period. You know, showing up in mass to a lot of those.
Not in masks.
Not in masks.
In groups.
In large groups. In mass. Yes, not in masks. Thank you. No, but seriously, just lots and lots of people really showing a lot of encouragement, a lot of support to, you know.
They're connected to their kids and they're connected to their schools. Now, I think there's an element of that is the fact that Clovis is significantly more affluent. So once you reach a certain amount of money, it's much easier. You're not working a second job. It's much easier to have a little extra time.
I don't
know if it's that simple, but I think that is an element of it.
Well, I mean, from my personal experience, I've never been affluent. I've always lived a very humble, modest life. But my parents, especially my mom, super engaged, making sure everything was following everything. I think it, you know, regardless, it always comes down to, you know, the state of mind and what is that parent? How engaged is that parent? And it's just by and large, I think, you know, the Clovis parents as a whole tend to be more engaged. I'm not sure exactly, you know, we can chicken or the egg kind of situation and say, you know, why it is, you know, Fresno's more seems to be less involved than Clovis. Is it this or that? But the simple reality is that the Clovis parents are much more involved.
Much more involved, like several times more involved. We're going to do the other easy race, which is Deanna Combs Flores. That's Area 6, and Bill Whitmore.
Yeah.
I've now seen 2 Bill Whitmore signs.
More than me.
I guess he's decided maybe he's sort of trying, but he didn't show up at either debate.
Nope.
I can't find anything online that gives me any sense of who he is, whether it's a website or social media.
Right.
And I know that Deanna, I'd like her to be stronger, but she's a patriot.
Yeah, well, Dina, I think is actually pretty principled. I've seen people say that she's not very knowledgeable on what's happening in the school districts, but I think she takes it very seriously. And
I think she will be.
I think she will be. So I definitely support her. I've seen her speak at a lot of things. She really is trying to win.
Mm-hmm. And she's totally a patriot. She definitely has my vote.
Yes.
The more difficult one, Clovis West.
Yeah.
That is kind of, it's the shape of Idaho. It starts mid-Clovis. It goes north, and then it shoots to the west along the river.
Yeah.
Quite a ways to Marks.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's Central Unified up that end.
I'm not entirely sure, but it's north west.
So like
Clovis
Woodward Park,
east.
think
Yeah.
of it as it goes
It's
beyond
Woodward
Woodward Park.
What about it?
It's just as significant in that it is a pretty affluent district. There's 4 people that really want it.
Mm-hmm.
I think 3 of them probably deserve it. I'm going to start with the one I like the least.
Okay.
Clint Olivier, you didn't show up at either debate. When you went on Ray Appleton to announce your candidacy, I didn't hear you give anything to the people about how you understood the district. You said, Clovis is good. I'm going to make sure Clovis stays good. Clovis is good. I wish there was more. Clint, you're a smart guy. Come on.
Yeah, I don't think he's the right fit for Clovis. I think he was former city council for Fresno, representing the Tower District area. He recently moved to the Clovis area, and the general sort of impression that I have of him is that this is just another political opportunity, and he's not necessarily in it for the right reasons. And I don't think that he really represents what Clovis is or wants. And so for me, I just there's no way I can support that. Technically, he is right now the local GOP's flyer that they're pushing out. He is their endorsement, but I really question how that one happened.
It also really bothered me at that endorsement meeting. All of the other candidates, and there were about 25 of them that went through that endorsement process at the Fresno GOP, and everybody had 2 minutes. Clint finished his 2 minutes, and then basically, because the chair wasn't willing to just cut him off, got an additional 2 minutes, bullied his way into an additional 2 minutes. I thought it left a bad taste in my mouth. I thought it was really kind of low class.
Yeah, no, me too. I was not a big fan. I thought it was very poor taste. I thought it was very egocentric and just not cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you need to do in those sorts of situations is acknowledge, you're out of time. You wrap up your current thought, your sentence, whatever it is.
Not double your time.
No. You finish. You say thank you and excuse yourself. And that's it. No, you don't speak over everybody and insist that you deserve more time just because you're you. That's no. It's no.
Yeah. Then it gets more complicated after that, because I think there's 3 candidates that there's good things about them. Samantha Bauer, definitely smart, strong personality, that I love. Involved with the district for 15 years. Mm-hmm. But when questioned, what worries me is I don't know whether she will stand against mandates. And she's quite comfortable talking in what I call education talk. Lawyer talk, education talk.
Well, she's been an education insider for many years now. That's her career. And so if we're just looking off of resumes and
finish your thought.
Okay. Well, just if we're just going off of resumes, I can understand why people might see the appeal, but I've got a lot of concerns.
We're going to go ahead and take a break. Sorry, my time management, not you.
The Guillermo Moreno Show on the best
Got
talk
so
in
involved I
town.
stopped looking at the clock.
1550 KXEX. Write it down.
But we should have just enough time to finish this.
Okay.
So, 3 minutes? So that means at 6. In general...
Sorry, it's 4.
It's 4? Okay.
In general.
So at 5.
Yeah.
in general, I consider this to be an important race because we need another strong individual.
Mhm.
And because of the questions and how Samantha dealt with those questions, I have a question mark as to where she'd stand. Is she going to be a fighter? Is she smart? Is she capable? Absolutely. I don't know that I want to talk more. I want to make sure that both the online audience and the radio audience get to hear this. So I guess we'll have to repeat some of this. We want to go ahead and I think we can jump through.
How much? Okay. How much?
We're going to be at 5 minutes. We're going to have 5 minutes left when we come back.
Okay. We'll just talk about it then. And then, because, well, how much, what else, what is the last hour?
The last hour is I want to talk a little bit about the cultural shift that's happened in Europe, in Canada, Tulsi Gabbard, and that big shift. And then I want to move into talking about voting.
Okay.
That's a lot, but I think we can get through it.
Okay.
We're just barely getting through this one, and I think we got it pretty close to right. So.
Okay. Yeah, no, we're I think, it's just, we don't need to spend a whole lot more time. I mean, it's just
Mhm.
I mean,
if I could speak as fast as Guillermo, we would have got through all of it, no problem. But I don't have that skill. He can think incredibly fast.
just drink more coffee, man. Just start taking some B supplements. I can hook it up, man. Just let me know. There's a lot of good stuff out there.
Guillermo does drink a lot of coffee.
That does explain some things. So we have it on good authority that Guillermo is hopped up on coffee.
Well, I mean, it works. I mean, it's one of those things that, I mean, coffee does help if you want your brain to think quicker.
Yes, but my problem is then I get a headache and a crash with too much caffeine. I got to be real careful. Yes, there is the high. With me, there's the crash. I guess if you never stop drinking, that happens.
I was just about to say, that's why you keep drinking coffee. You start with the morning, you got someone during the middle of the day, the afternoon, and then you start kind of tailing off.
See, I don't need it in the morning.
Oh, I do.
I'm one of those
minute?
people that's wired in the morning.
I'm a night owl. I'm a real slow to get started kind of person.
I'm up at 5 whether I want to be or not, and I'm perky. It annoys the people significantly.
I'm not a morning person. It's rough.
I've had things thrown at me, like "What's wrong with you?" Been yelled at quite a number of times.
30 seconds?
The hardest things about working restoration job having to 5 in the morning. Parts of the job I miss a lot, but not
Most beautiful part of the day, and it's the easiest to get things done
10 seconds?
because there's no distractions. Sunset's beautiful too, but I'm just wound down by then.
I get a second wind.
There's our second wind.
There we go. It's got a good choice in music.
The Guillermo Moreno Show on the best talk in town. 1550 KXEX. Write it down.
Wish I had a voice like that.
Slower.
Even with my lowering, it just doesn't quite do it.
Practice. You'll get there.
This is Eric Rollins, and I am guest hosting Guillermo Moreno's show today, and we're talking about local elections, specifically the Clovis School Board. So we were talking about what district number is that? That is Area 1, the Clovis West District. We just got done talking about Clint Olivier, and I think, was there a consensus of no?
I don't support him at all. I don't know how to, like, I'm just gonna be blunt. I don't want him in that spot. Like, I'm pretty diplomatic when it comes to a lot of stuff, but man,
Most stuff, Sean. Almost always.
I try to be very, very fair, and I think it's being very, very fair to say that that is not a person who would represent Clovis.
That's fair. It also bothers me that he wasn't willing. It's one thing he had an excuse for the first debate, but couldn't make the second debate. You're a big enough name that you got on Ray Appleton, and that you didn't talk about the district, except it's good, Clovis good, I want to preserve good.
But we were talking about.
Yes, we were.
So here's where I'm kind of at with Samantha Bowers. I do think that she has a great resume. She's very knowledgeable. Another individual who I respect their intelligence for sure. But again, I have reservations and concerns that she actually really represent Clovis. Clovis wants to be what Clovis tries to be. I think that she is another kind of person that would let Sacramento kind of dictate a lot. I think she was very much involved with a lot of those sorts of processes. And I just don't think that she's got that fight in her. Even if she is principled, I don't see the fight in her to really take a lot of that stuff on and push back. And that's just really what I really want. Because I see Clovis schools as being one of those beacons that other school districts can look at. It's fairly large. It's not nearly as big as Fresno, but it's bigger than a lot of school districts. It's got a great track record. I think it prided itself in leadership. And I really want to see it be a leader in restoring California's education system. It's one of those things that has been brought up before too, where and by I think Joanne Burton really, she talks about it a lot, where it's like, okay, we're high on the list of schools in California, but California's near the bottom of the country. So what does that really mean? And
before we move on to Joanne Burton, I just want to give a couple stats.
Okay.
Pre-COVID, Clovis Unified was 58% proficient in math. Now that's scary for one of the best districts in the area. And it's 72% proficient in reading. I consider those both
not good
highly
enough.
Concerning.
It's not good enough.
Not good enough.
That's the bottom. It's not good enough. And if we want it to get good enough, we actually need people who are going to fight and make it better. Not people who are just going to say, well, this is just how it is. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I hear you, and this is very concerning. I'm concerned as well, but unfortunately, our hands are tied. No, I am so sick of that. I am so done with that. I am so tired of that. And if a candidate gives me that sort of impression, I'm sorry. If I've got an alternative, I'm going to vote for the alternative.
Mm-hmm. So we're down to about a minute and a half. Joanne Burton.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's America first. She is getting stronger, but I wish she was stronger yet. She's definitely smart. She definitely goes to events. She made a point of spending significant time at the fair before the GOP because she made a commitment, even though she did not get the endorsement. All of those things are pretty impressive about Joanne.
Right. No, I know Joanne. I've seen her and talked at so many events, talked to her numerous times. I have no doubt that she's very principled. She's not from Clovis, but I think she chose Clovis as her home because she sees the value here, and then it's worth fighting for, worth defending. My only thing is I don't know if she's got the personality to really lead a charge in that district to get it back to where it needs.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That leaves us one candidate, which I wish I knew more about.
Same.
He jumped in late, but he does have a strong personality. He's saying the right things, and I saw him at school boards.
Yeah. No, I checked Emmanuel. He's our fourth candidate on that list, and generally speaking, the impression I've got from him is he's the one that seems the most capable of taking on that fight that I want. And so currently, that's kind of where I'm at. I want to hear and see more, though.
Absolutely. We're going to go ahead and take a break. This is Eric Rollins, guest hosting for Guillermo Moreno, the best talk in town, here on 1550 KXEX.
It had cut us off, so I didn't fire the bumper.
Okay, no
Yeah.
problem.
Get you some coffee.
Big cup.
Okay, so moving on to 3. I think there's all kinds of interesting things happening in Europe. Yeah. And, we're not in a vacuum. Trump influenced the world. I think that influence isn't done.
Well, I think really there's global trends all happening. A lot of things that have all been going on the last several years. I think he definitely helped. I mean, when he had that office, like he went around the world and you saw he was the person people wanted to talk to.
Mm-hmm. Well, think of it as he's a nationalist and a populist. That is the big trend that's happening around the world. That countries are unique and special.
Yeah.
So anti-globalist, this idea that we're all one world. Well, in a sense we are, but
No,
he
we're not.
wanted us to be governed by American decisions. And that whole concept as being embraced.
About 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay.
So 55.
I'm waiting for it to kind of click over, and then I'll know.
Okay.
Well, I really see that as a big deal. I'd say he was the loudest voice, because Trump would never let anybody louder than him exist. But I generally liked
Sorry,
his
guys.
policies. But the idea that he basically awakened the world. Now, I get that a lot of those trends were happening pre-Trump.
Mhm.
The Bernie phenomena is actually very similar. They identified a lot of the same problems, and they're both populist. The difference is the solutions they had. At one point, you were on the left.
Yeah, it was. It was. I mean, 2016 was the biggest change for me. I'd always been following politics my entire life. I've always been pretty jaded and cynical when it comes to a lot of the stuff.
I'm
but-
so glad you left that behind.
Well, honestly, like I didn't really ever expect like a Trump figure. I really didn't. I figured, a lot of these sorts of characters that are actually going to come from the outside, put everything on the line to try to, really be somebody new, somebody different, somebody outside of the establishment. I didn't even think that was possible. I thought, even back high school, I remember having talks with my dad about, it's just by the time we ever get to vote, they've already chosen from a handful that said they're good enough. You can pick from one of them. We'll be okay with it. And then you just watched the whole world melt down because we rejected that. We pushed back against that. We said, no, that's not good enough. We want different. We don't like you. We don't like your policies. We don't like what you're doing. You don't represent us. You're not listening to us. You're not making our lives better. You're making it worse. We don't know what he's going to do, but we got a good feeling about it, and we're going to go with that.
Yeah. Well, the left seemed to believe that Trump wasn't listening. And I think that what Trump did was amplify a mood and a kind of a feeling that people were having. He gave them a voice.
Right. Well, that's one of the things, too, that they try to, like, Trump cult and just repeat what he says. No, he represents what people already think he's feeling. That's why they support him. That's why they love him. That's why they will continue to support him. And as far as me, like, leaving
30 seconds?
the left, it was, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation in itself. And it's for a lot of the same reasons that a lot of other people are doing it for the last several years. Everybody just kind of has their moments of realization. And, it's just that it doesn't work. It's not a thing.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, there's that quote.
10 seconds?
About having a heart when you're a kid and a brain when you're an adult.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's that energy.
This is the Guillermo Moreno Show.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Even the third time it did it today, and I'm still
So we
okay
live in
with
a
it.
world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with guns. Who's gonna do it? You? I have a greater responsibility than you can possibly fathom. I would rather you just said thank you and went on your way. Otherwise, I suggest you pick up a weapon and stand opposed. Either way, I don't give a damn what you think you are entitled to.
This is Eric Rollins in for Guillermo Moreno. I am guest hosting with my good friend Sean Burdine, and this is hour 3, so we're going to shift focus. We talked about Fresno schools, first hour. By the way, you can find that on social media. It should be on YouTube, should be on Facebook, should be on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast. So if you can't get us live or you only watch a portion of it and you want to go back and see us again, please do so. For this third hour, I wanted to kind of shift to the mood of the world. You know, we've jumped off a woke cliff, and I think that there was a rubber band attached to that person that jumped off that cliff. And now we're starting to see the rebound from that. That things are starting to shift. And I wanted to focus on Europe. Probably the biggest thing that happened in Europe would be what happened in Italy. They chose a center-right nationalist, populist candidate to run their country. That's a big deal. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think right now what we're just in the middle of is the repercussions of several years of policies that have failed and betrayed the people, the constituencies. We were talking earlier about local control, and I think that's a huge part of all of this. Is right now you see this globalist movement where you've got these authoritarians telling you exactly how you can and cannot live, what you can do in your countries, and you have people that are saying no. And it's happening throughout Europe. We're seeing more and more of it start to rise up. It's been happening for the last several years, but as conditions continue to get more and more difficult, more and more people are waking up and pushing back. Mm-hmm. And so that's ultimately the trend that we're in right now. The world just saying, no, this isn't working. You don't represent me. That's not what I want. And it's exciting. It's hard to keep track of everything that's going on because there's so much going. Italy and their vote. I hope this woman is able to push back against the United Nations.
She is a bold speaker and doesn't shy from saying what she believes. Consequences be damned.
Yes, and that's what I want. That's what we need. That because we can't keep just putting up with these, self-elected people. I mean, especially the case in Europe, where you had, multitude of nations all within this one continent. We had the United Nations that was sort of this apparatus, this bureaucracy built on top of the world in order to try to help direct things and communicate. But then they also have the European Union, which is an entire administrative state on top of all of that, mostly focused in the hands of the Germans and the French, who then tell the rest of the continent how they can live their lives, what things they can do. These people are not elected. I think it was something hilarious, like last month, they tried saying that Hungary was not a democratic state, even though they had a democratic election to re-elect Orban, and because he is not following what the European Union wants, they have the audacity, these individuals who were not elected themselves, say that that's not a democracy. That's why Europe's pushing back, is they're getting sick of this stuff. They've got their energy prices skyrocketing. They've got all kinds of turmoil resulting in the immigration crisis from several years ago that so many of these countries, like Sweden, have really felt the repercussions of.
And Sweden just changed their parliament to a center-right parliament. And again, nationalist populist party.
They were social democrats, or basically socialists, for the last 20 or so years. And just recently had a massive shift. And it's really on those two major issues that really has caused that shift in mentality and culture there, where it's just the immigration crisis has resulted in a massive failure in these countries.
Now, what we have to realize is immigration crisis. What you mean is they had completely open borders to North Africa.
Well, that's back in 2016, 2017, 2015, we saw the mass immigration of people from North Africa and the Middle East, especially like Western Middle East, into the European countries. And so many of them, again, European Union said you need to take X number in regardless. A lot of the countries were on board with it, but even those that were not were still forced to do it. Particularly
because Germany and France have the economic levers to tell them what to do.
Well, yeah, and what ended up happening is we ended up with enclaves of people that do not identify with the culture. They don't identify with any of the national traditions. They don't identify often with values. And I'm not
no assimilation, no melting pot.
There was no assimilation in this at all because there was a massive influx in a very short period of time. And I'm not going to try to say anything ill on those individuals who made that trek, but I mean they're strangers in this land trying to recreate
their own land.
Right. There are even some places where they would try to enforce their own Sharia laws, and these are
particularly in France.
In the UK, it's really bad. And these sorts of things also don't get talked about in American media very much, which is incredibly infuriating. But they are feeling it. They are feeling the consequences of these globalists that do not care about them, that just say, do as we say. And it's just, that's why we're seeing these massive trends and shifts where people who several years ago might have been like, yes, that sounds great, I love this. And then they see what it actually is. And they are forced to see the failures of it, the mistakes, and the problems. It's all throughout the world right now. Western Europe is feeling it terribly. America, Canada, it's a thing. It's everywhere.
I want to start with Germany.
Okay.
It's actually a little hard to find this on major news channels,
Mm-hmm.
but Germany has had multiple dozens
Yeah.
of over 100,000 people protesting.
Yeah.
Some of it was COVID, some of it was immigration and other things, but those are huge protests
Multiple
for a country that size.
Well, multiple countries like France, Italy, Germany. You've got Netherlands with especially the farmers. Just all these countries right now, massive protests. But you don't hear about it here.
Even if you watch European news, you have to typically watch the more alternate news, or you just hear like a little passing statement and how those people are wrong because they have a leftist media just like we do.
Right.
Interestingly enough, so France, Germany are the primary economic engines now that England is out of European Union. In France, you're aware that they have an election coming up, and Le Pen, Macron is in charge, and he's essentially a socialist. Le Pen is a populist, a nationalist, and center-right. And he's up by like 12 points in polls. Probably France is shifting. That is huge.
Well, that was Le Pen was also a major factor in 2016, where then we started seeing a lot of France pushback. I was really optimistic back then that she'd be able to get it, but it's just things have gotten worse since then. We've seen even more revolts and more pushback against Macron. We had the whole yellow vest movement that came out for a while. They had another national strike this last week to push back against what he's trying to do there. This is another one of those things where even if this is, we don't see a major shift this year in their election process, I feel like we are just on that cusp of big things happening because the culture and mentality is shifting.
Well, when we looked at the numbers, and I am terrible with numbers, folks, but there's another center-right party besides the one that Le Pen leads. That one was at 7.5%, and Le Pen's party was at somewhere around 23. These are rough numbers because I didn't write it down. But that means that 30% of the country is center-right, for essentially a almost socialist country. At least extremely strong socialist tendencies. That's huge.
Well, it's just, it's just the repercussions of the policies.
Mm-hmm.
You live with it, you deal with it, and I tell you, the French are a contentious bunch. A long history of rebellion, so I don't see that.
And they beheaded people. They don't mess around.
Yeah, that was a part of that for sure. So I have a lot of optimism when it comes to Western Europe, especially, and it's unfortunate because we are in the middle of an economic crisis, and they are feeling it far worse.
Mm-hmm.
They are really questioning the leadership, the governments there. They're questioning NATO a lot more of those sorts of discussions that were not on the table a few years ago are. And I think they are probably in for a really tight winter just because the energy crisis, it is really, really bad. It is, and so
a lot of people will probably die. Particularly in Eastern Europe.
Well, I feel for the Eastern Europeans because they've experienced communism. They were part of the Soviet Union. They were in that bloc, and many of those nations have been stalwartly trying to resist falling back into it, whether it be from Russia or whether it be from the new European Union and its march towards globalism. I still remember, there's a great quote from Patton about basically he believed that after World War II that fascism would then come to, socialism would come to Europe in the West, liberalism. And he saw that on the rise there. It's very similar sort of warnings in the United States, but he saw it early on that, you know, those sorts of messages were already starting to pop up then, and that, you know, they'd move that direction. And that's one of the things also that's really important for people to understand about, you know, today. What we're experiencing today is not new. This has been many decades in movement for a lot of these trends. A lot of these ideas are not brand new. They've been in smaller areas that have gradually grown and or possibly even festered, depending on how you want to look at it. And so right now, I kind of have a bit of a, you know, view that sometimes these periods are sort of necessary to remind us what's really important, to remind us what our values are, to remind us what we need to fight for, to remind us what we can do without. And it's very difficult in those times, but those times usually lead to much better.
Well, they create strong men. There's a great saying about hard times create strong men.
And
strong men create good times, and then the cycle starts because good times create weak men. And that's, I don't see that as just a man or a woman thing. That is a humankind.
Oh no, right now we are living in an age of absolute ease and luxury and decadence, and people don't appreciate it for what it is and how fragile it is.
I want to go ahead and move to Canada, much closer to home.
Okay.
Pierre Poilievre? I'm not positive on how to pronounce his last name because I am very not French. Nonetheless, he won the Conservative Party. He consolidated the power of the Conservative Party in Canada. He got 68% of the vote, won in the first round. He won almost every district, all but 8. There were like 300 and some odd districts, and he won all but 8. And when you look at the polls, he's doing better than the woke leftist, the one who embraces leftism and wokeism. He's a lot like Gavin Newsom. Plastic, not real. You never get to see Justin Trudeau speak from the heart. He never admits that he's wrong, even when he's absolutely clearly wrong, and he doesn't believe in freedom.
Trudeau is very much cut from the same cloth as Newsom and Macron. They went to the same schools, they've had the same training, they have the same sort of mentality. And I think there's an interesting thing too also to know with I was going to call him Macron and Newsom, but with Trudeau back in 2017,
there's not a lot of difference.
There's not. There's really not. But he declared Canada to be the first post-national nation.
Yeah.
And the idea that there was no longer an official national identity that really represents Canada. And I don't just, you know, that is so much just what the globalist message is that you don't have any traditions, you don't have any values that are unique to you. What we are all just one people, all on this planet, and we all must listen to what these appointed, you know, intellectuals tell us how we need to live our life. And so Canada has been feeling it really heavy during all the lockdown periods. You know, Trudeau was flexing those emergency powers and saying people can't congregate, people can't do this, people can't do that.
And they have a different level of emergency powers than what can happen in the U.S.
They don't have our Constitution.
Right, they don't have our protections.
They don't. I mean, that's one of the things that really makes America so unique in so many ways, really is what our Constitution provides us and protects us from. And they don't have it there. And I remember watching also his speech recently on you know, banning the gun sales on all handguns. Just blanket, you know.
I'm the king and this is what I shall do.
Yeah.
Hear my decree.
And so
obey.
I'm very glad to see that, you know, Canada's also making this shift. I'm it's just, again, it's dealing with the repercussions of these policies, which is why I think so many people end up leaving the left, because it is one of those ideas, you know, when you're younger, you're naive, you're idealistic, you think
when you lead from your heart.
Absolutely. And you don't have a lot of life experiences, you don't know as much about history, you don't have a lot of context, and so a lot of these ideas sound great, they feel great, they make you feel like a good person. And I think that's really part of the key for this propaganda that affects the youth, which is really, you know, where we see our most dense demographics as far as adopting this woke messaging. But
they don't have any skin in the game in the real world either.
No, They don't. And that's where the shift starts to happen. People get older and they start having more experiences. They start seeing what these actually look like, how these actually fail. I mean, we can go down the list of all the different, blue cities, deep blue cities in our country, and see these policies in action and just how destructive they are.
Well, and these blue cities, it's not like, oh, they're newly blue. Chicago
Right.
hasn't elected a Republican in more than 50 years. Any Republican.
And so the best way to argue against these policies is just to look at what they lead to. And so people are feeling it across the world. It's not just here. It's above us. It's all across the pond. Everybody's waking up and saying, we don't like this. We don't want to keep doing this.
There was a beacon of hope that happened here in the U.S. with Tulsi Gabbard.
Mm-hmm.
I saw her as the most reasonable Democrat that was running, the one that believed in free speech the most, the one that was willing to take bold stands,
mm-hmm.
the one that eviscerated our current vice president.
No, I've Tulsi, she's great. That's another fighter, integrity.
I don't agree with her on all issues, but I truly appreciate the fact that she's okay with two people having differing opinions and doesn't think that one of them needs to be shut down like our president does.
No, that's one of the things I absolutely respect. He's willing to have those sorts of discussions with people. It's something that we've lost, at least temporarily. I do think that we're coming back to it, because I see that more and more people are sick and tired of this cancel culture, this woke mob dictating what is allowed to be said and what's not. And I just see her as one more in this major trend that we're seeing right now. And so it is another great moment there, kind of as another major figure, one of the last good Democrats really to say, I can't continue to support this party.
Right. I still have friends and neighbors, but I don't know any elected Democrat that's in, say, Congress or higher that I have any respect for. Maybe there's still one left, but I am not aware of one, and that is kind of sad.
Well, it's just
It used to be the party of the poor, the party of the people, the party of civil rights, though that is somewhat of a fallacy, and there's more to that story. Nonetheless, they positioned themselves in that space, and I don't believe they do anymore.
No, they definitely don't. They are absolutely the party of the elites and trying to impose radical sanctions on the rest of the common people.
And they're anti-white, anti-Christian.
They just want us all divided so that they can control us.
I believe that's the underlying message, but one of the ways they're doing it is by basically trying to intimidate and scare everybody that's white, everybody that is Christian, or anybody that votes conservative that has a different skin color, and then they brand them like they did Larry Elder as the white face of black supremacy. By the way, Larry Elder happens to be African American. That's not why I love Larry Elder. I love Larry Elder because he's brilliant and articulate and strong and fierce.
But they do try to make a show of anybody who does. But it worked for a bit because people weren't ready for it. People weren't used to it. People were scared of being hit. There weren't very many people who were willing to take those bigger stands. But as we get further and further into this, more and more people are standing together. You can't keep whacking everybody down, because people are going to stand together and say, we're tired of this. We're done with it. And I think that's really kind of the trend that we're in right now. And that's why I really am pretty optimistic about a major potential red wave in November. And whether or not, it comes right now, I know it's going to come.
It's going to come in a bunch of places. Whether it comes in California outside of local, I believe we're going to be moving in the right direction. California, I'm less confident. But we have a chance to have a couple, maybe as many as 4 people elected on a statewide office. I think there's 4 candidates that have a shot.
Yeah.
And we haven't had a California statewide elected Republican in something like 12 years.
No, but that's the thing, though. Trends are happening. I mean, we can also look at all these woke programs in Netflix and Hollywood productions. They're all failing. People are tired of this. They want something different. They want something real.
Well, Woman King.
Another one that really flopped huge.
Gay Superman.
Yeah, that one didn't go over well. Yeah. No, there's I mean, for the last few years we have plenty of examples of these things failing. Like Go Woke, Go Broke has actually been pretty consistent. And
Well, I don't know that early on it was as true, but as people more and more realize that if they want First Amendment rights, if they want to preserve this last great hope for the world, that we have to get back to having a civil society, honoring and protecting the First Amendment. And I'm going to use this as a segue, and voting. So we're going to shift actually to talking about voting.
Okay.
So we're going to start with that. We got about 3 minutes. We'll take a break. We'll jump back in it.
Okay. What part of voting do you want
Some basic questions like
Okay.
ink pen, things like that. Questions that voters have, and they're like afraid to vote, and they think that there's a problem when I'm not sure there is.
to? Okay. Yeah. I mean, we can start with all of that. Bottom line is that it's most important to vote in person. They're sending out the vote by mail ballots, and I'm sure probably everybody that's listening has already received theirs. You don't need to vote with that, and I recommend that you don't. I fully recommend voting in person at a vote center. A little context is, this has been the subject that I have most devoted myself to for the last couple of years, is really trying to learn our election system inside and out, locally, state level, nationally, trying to really understand it. And it runs a bit contrary to what our state GOP recommends, but I think that they're wrong.
I think absolutely, I agree that they're wrong. I'm a Republican, and I think they are profoundly wrong.
And after the break, I can really get into why that is.
So people have questions like this came up at a meeting, and you addressed it with the ink pens.
Yeah.
Does it much matter which pen you vote with when you go to a voting center?
So the important thing to always remember with your ballot is that's effectively like a scantron that you would use for your test. And so you don't want any stray marks. You want to bubble in your answer as clearly as possible. You can't cross any other thing off, no circles, nothing else. All it is just filling that in.
And if you do, and you do cross-offs and things like that, you should ask for a separate second ballot, right?
Right. You can't ask for a replacement ballot, so you made some sort of mistake, some sort of error. You can ask for a replacement. Where the concerns with the pens have come from in the past is really dark felt pens that bubble in so dark that it'll still appear on the backside, which leads to the machine registering as a stray mark. And so what you need to do is make sure that, when you're filling it in, you don't bubble it in that dark. And one of the nice things also, if you vote in person, is that you will have immediate feedback. When you try to put your ballot into the tabulator, it'll spit it out if it detects stray marks.
But if you mailed it in, you'd never know.
You wouldn't know.
And then it goes to what they call adjudication.
Correct. Which means that they get to try to interpret whatever you intended to vote.
And if they're honest, that works out fine.
But you're trusting somebody else to make sure that your ballot is being cast in the way.
Right, so it's a vulnerability.
Absolutely. It's a big one.
And there's a lot of vulnerabilities in the system. We're going to go ahead and take a break.
The Guillermo Moreno Show on the best talk in town. 1550 KXEX. Write it down.
Three minutes, Jeremy? 4 minutes.
Three.
It's going to be.
Okay.
I know.
Easy. That's easy.
Yes, but now we're in your comfort zone.
Oh, that's all my comfort zone, except when we start getting into some of the side of my. Like, I've met so many of these people, over the last couple of years, really going around meeting and speaking to a lot of candidates, but
You're
not
one of the
everyone-
few people that has met at least as many as me, and probably more, because you went to the CRA convention.
gone to a lot of events, and there's some of these candidates, like, they really try hard. Most of the, a lot of the candidates that I was really rooting for didn't make it through the primary, unfortunately.
Agreed.
And it's unfortunate, but
Yes, but they're a potential bench for the future. So I hope that the better ones,
Yeah.
whether they win or not, are willing to jump back in the fray.
same. I mean, there's some great candidates in there. It's just one of the unfortunate realities with California is it's a massive, massive state. And if you don't have name recognition going in, it is a tough sell to try to get people to actually care about you, to listen to you, to think about you, to remember your name. And so a lot of these candidates, they spend a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort driving up and down the state to try to make it happen. And, if they didn't make it this time, I really hope that they do stay involved. And a lot of them have. A lot of the names that I really liked, they were not just one and done. Like, no.
Jenny Ray LaRue is still, I don't know if she'll run for office again, but she is still engaged.
Yeah. Rachel Hamm, Cordy Williams are other ones that I know that are staying super involved.
Sean Collins is still involved.
Yeah.
That man is a potential superstar.
1 minute?
So we still have, some of those great people out there that I think are committed to. It's not going to be easy.
No, well, because there are so many vulnerabilities in our voting system.
Part of it. And another part of it is getting past general sort of apathy on stuff. But, I mean, as things continue to get worse, people continue to think about it. I mean, there's
30 seconds?
that question. Is your life better today compared to 4 years ago? And there's also the Carvel quote that it's the economy, stupid. It's the economy.
Yeah. There's the bottom line. We are used to affluence.
10 seconds?
People like being able to have some level of comfort that they can go to work and have comfort in knowing that.
The Guillermo Moreno Show on the best talk in town. 1550 KXEX. Write it down.
Well, good evening, folks. This is Eric Rollins, guest hosting for Guillermo Moreno, or as he's affectionately known by so many of my friends, Guillermo. And I'm not quite sure why they can't get Guillermo, but hey, Guillermo rolls with it either way. And tonight we are kind of talking about the state of the state. We are in the third hour. Guillermo does not always do a third hour. Sometimes he replays the first hour, but when we had this opportunity to talk about some things we're passionate about, we had to take it. I'm joined by Sean Burdine.
Hello.
Probably outside of Linda Plain and Ruth Weiss, the person that knows the most about California elections that I've met. That doesn't mean that there aren't other people, but that I've met. And we were kind of talking about some general questions on voting. We talked a lot about how there were vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
I think one of those vulnerabilities is the fact that we mail everybody a ballot. And we don't do a very good job of cleaning the voter rolls. And I realize that some people can't get IDs. Wait, I'm being sarcastic. Obviously, the fact that Democrats are saying that certain populations, because of the color of their skin, can't get ID, that's racist.
That one's really bad. I can't believe that they're still trying to push that narrative. I mean, it's awful.
We have a Georgia governor candidate that is still pushing that narrative.
It's just mind-blowingly, astonishingly stupid and racist. It's awful. Like I feel like that's a word that is way overused in today's culture and society. But that's what that is. Saying that they can't do it. Scene.
Yep.
Have some more respect.
Yep. Now I want to point out that about 15 years ago, President Carter was on a commission that talked about making our elections safe. One of the recommendations was we should not have vote by mail or extremely limited vote by mail, because they realize, if a soldier's overseas, if somebody's truly handicapped and disabled, that they should have that option if you're going on some major trip. But that was to be the exception. California's gone the other route.
Yeah, well, largely, California for several years, for decades now, has been going down this route of making elections less and less secure and create more and more openings, weaknesses, vulnerabilities, whatever you want to call them, that make it so that if, in theory, somebody wanted to cheat, that there'd be ways to do it and just open it up. I'm the biggest problem that really came out was the recent vote by mail system that came out during COVID. And so much of of our voting is built around that idea that everybody should have the right to vote, which on fundamental level I agree with, of course. But we got to make sure that it's only legal votes being cast. And this vote by mail system, what it does is it really opens it up for almost anybody. Any name that might be on those voter rolls will receive a ballot in the mail automatically. It doesn't matter if they still live there, if they ever live there, if that person is even alive.
I have a friend that for several years, for 7 years, and she always turned it into the Register of Voters office here in Fresno County. Her dad had never lived with her. Her dad had been deceased for like 12 years at that point, where she received the first ballot. He'd never lived outside of San Diego County. Yet it came to Fresno County, to her mailbox, and then followed her when she moved to a different place in Clovis. And it never got addressed. Again, she went to the Register of Voters office, took this, and said, hey, 7 times. This is a person I know personally. I completely believe her.
Yeah, I've heard similar stories, and there's a few things that kind of go into it. Now, it depends on who is working in the office, who the registrar is, and what they're doing. And I do have it on good authority that our current registrar does take it seriously, taking names off. So we'll say hypothetically we
it was all pre James Coos.
So that I'm just saying that can be a potential factor. For state of California, we have a statewide system called CalVote that allows basically Sacramento a little bit of a back door into each county's election systems, and so that they can kind of add and remove names also that way. And so it's really tricky to kind of know exactly where one begins and one ends. It's also developed by the same people who made the Obamacare website, so it's not exactly consistent or reliable, which are other major problems with that system. And then the other thing that also goes into it is that even if a name is taken off, it's very easy to put it back on again. And that's one of the real unfortunate realities. One of the things I really want to point out to people also is, the names do get removed off of voter rolls sometimes, and, the way they're supposed to, and all of that. And LA County had gotten behind several years ago, and it was pointed out that there was thousands and thousands of deceased voters that needed to be cleaned off the rolls. They lost a lawsuit headed by Election Integrity Project California. And
by the way, it took a lawsuit to get them to clean the voter rolls in LA.
Yeah, a big lawsuit. That's where we also get Alex Padilla, who's also running for senator, involved in that. So, even if you're not a huge fan of Mark Moiser, he's still better than that guy. So they lose the lawsuit. They got to take off 16,000 names, and they were almost immediately put right back on again, because there's nothing that really stops it. They're in the database. They can be put right back on again. That's one of the things that we have learned in the last couple of years. It's really easy to say, how disastrous and how terrible 2020 was, and we can, say that it was rigged. They did all these terrible things, but silver lining to it is it's given a tremendous opportunity for very dedicated individuals to do some massive research to figure out exactly what's going on. And that's part of why I highly, highly recommend voting in person and on election day, or as close to election day as possible. Because what other parties or candidates or recommendations that I'm hearing, including from the GOP itself in the California state, is that if you vote early, people can't vote in your place, and that they don't have to worry about robocalling.
They're probably technically right on the robocalling, but
well, here's the problem: is that creates, all the voting early does is it creates a manageable curve that you can expect of voter turnout and how many votes you can expect on the last day. And if you vote early, you're contributing to that, because it's not hidden or secret knowledge that you voted. It's known that you voted by both parties, by whoever else has access to that data and information. They know, okay, X number of people have voted thus far. We can expect this many more, for this. And you can start towards the end ballot stuff. Don't forget that California, it's completely legal to ballot harvest.
It is illegal in most of the country.
Most of the country, and people are pushing back against it. But for now, It is completely legal to ballot harvest as long as you are not paying for votes.
So we need to define what ballot harvesting is.
Ballot harvesting is essentially just casting a ballot on behalf of somebody else. So they can give you their vote by mail ballot, and you can take in as many as you want. You know, you can take it in for your entire home, your entire neighborhood, hundreds, thousands of people. Really, there's no limit. And so we need to push back against that, get rid of that. But as long as that's here, you know, it's part of that vote by mail system that really allows and facilitates a lot of these sorts of issues through.
Well, it makes us very vulnerable.
It does.
Because it makes it very easy if somebody was inclined to cheat.
And then the difference of, you know, voting early versus voting at the end, that's one more vote that they don't have a count for. And if everybody votes at the very end, you know, that's a big part of what happened in 2016 and 2020 is just too many votes all at once at the very end that they couldn't account for. And, you know, that stopped the count. All of that was the direct result of overloading the system, and they had to actually get more ballots.
Well, I want to point out in 2020, magically, there were 6 key places in the U.S., all major cities, all major population centers, that all shut down. And then overnight, magically, an incredibly high percentage of ballots only came in for one candidate. Now, is that possible? Yeah, it's possible, but something's fishy.
Statistically, it's not possible.
Right. I was
It's
going to go there.
yeah,
But
it's not statistically possible for what we saw to happen, which is how we've learned so much. And like I said, it's just so the ballots can come off and the names can come and go. And it's very important that we get as many people to vote as we can and just overload that system. You know, I know that I've spoken to a lot of people that feel like their vote doesn't matter, that it's already rigged, that they can't win. But if you don't try, you can't win. You need to try. You need to believe.
it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Absolutely. And so, you know, I encourage everybody to vote, encourage other people to vote, make sure that you do this, because this is what our republic is built off of, is this process. And if we lose this process, we effectively lose our country as we know it. Because at that point, we are no longer able to civically govern ourselves. And which brings me to currently the Election Integrity Project California lawsuit, which I don't know how many people are aware of this one, but it is a massive, massive lawsuit that Election Integrity Project California, the group that has an organization that's been at this for well over a decade, documenting all of this, currently involved in a lawsuit that states that the state of California cannot actually be considered a constitutional republic because of the way that it has changed its voting laws over time.
So if you want to know more about EIP, you would go to EIP-CA.com. Okay.
And it's a monumental lawsuit. I fully support it. I love what they're doing. I think one to keep track of. I think the whole country is watching it and seeing how this develops, because, you know, if we can make the case that these laws are not constitutional, that they're not working in favor of people, that sets a huge precedent. That forces a lot of conversation, forces new policies, forces changes that other states can also follow.
And it has moved quite a ways, because it is before the Ninth Circuit in discovery, but it's a 3-judge panel. It is not the full court at this point.
Right. But it has moved into discovery. You know, it's just keep on moving from here. It's a big deal. As far as ways that, you know, if anybody wants to get involved locally, they do take volunteers, and that's one thing that I would recommend. Also, if you go to the website, sign up for the newsletter, and hopefully the next election cycle involved that way. Having a poll worker is a good way to do it.
Yes, but the period to help for this election is over, because they require vigorous training.
Yes.
But because of the way California's laws are designed, any person could go and observe at the polls for now and document what they see, and you could report it to EIP. It just would not have quite the same weight, because there's a procedure to get it all right.
Right. And this is one of those tricky things too, because we are one of the few states actually that does allow citizens any background. You don't need a political affiliation. You don't need to be part of a campaign. You can watch the entire process as much as you want. You just can't be disrupted. Although It seems like it sounds like our state's trying to move away from that and take that away.
Well, of course they are. They don't believe in freedom.
They don't want us to have that level of transparency, that ability to have civic. And
Well, that so fits King Gavin. He so deserves your vote, folks. You know, if there's no other motivation, how can you not want to grab this man by the lapels and ruffle him a bit? I'm not going to call for more than that. Just ruffle them a bit. I'm thinking more, but I'm not going to say more. And I hope that people are able to overthrow King Gavin in a peaceful manner. That's my hope. We'll see.
yeah, no, I'm definitely ready for major change in California. Whether or not that they're going to be as vocal about it, I think even people who they support Biden publicly don't. Some of them do, but I think that for some of them it's just fashion. I think for a lot of the people who say that they support Newsom, for fashion.
Yes, but when you start asking them why, I get nothing. And
Well,
I've asked that of family members.
Mhm.
I get literally nothing. They say things like, I like what he says. Okay, but what about he's done? What policy can you point to? Can you give me one?
well, that's why I do think that we're heading for major changes, because it's just as things continue to get more difficult in our state, more and more people will be more engaged, ask those sorts of questions.
I don't know if I can share this whole story, but I have it on good authority that the Register of Voters is absolutely moving in the right direction. It is kind of a story of hope, but I never did hear back as to whether I can share the full thing. Do you know? You didn't hear either?
I don't know.
Okay, then I'm simply going to talk in a general way and say, while I have concerns about James Coos, I do believe that he knows his job. He's very dedicated to his job, and currently there's a real effort to clean the voters' rolls. So there's a point of light and kind of a point of hope. What actually happens with that, because you said that because of the CalVoter system, they could put some of those names back on. That's highly concerning, but nonetheless, when you have anybody doing the right thing, we need to acknowledge that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if people also want to be a part of the effort, also double check it. Concerned Citizen. There's another group that is working on that. I think I've been canvassing, checking our roles also for voters, fraudulent. Still something that we can do. This group has been able to access information and those logs. If you'd like to participate,
We've got about 30 seconds before our break, so
yeah, I was about to.
okay.
Yeah, so if you want to help out with that, it's with Rose Win, ROSEWINN email.com, and just let her know.
Well, there's our break. It found us. But we are fortunately winding down, but we're not quite there yet.
The Guillermo Moreno Show on the best talk in town, 1550 KXEX. Write it down.
So this one's only 2.5.
Okay.
That gives us more time after.
What's it about?
Wrap it up. Last segment.
Anything you can think of, any positives that are happening about either ways to move forward, groups like talk about Constitutionalists for a minute, or other groups that you're hopeful, like maybe you can give more details about what that group that you just brought up that Rose is running, ways to get involved, I think are important. Just complaining isn't that useful. And I don't think we complained very much. I think it was mostly good information, but it didn't leave a path forward.
Well, it's always asking people.
Mhm.
One of the problems how you pull people along. The most important thing inspire them, you tell them why,
Mhm.
how, and
You hope they take the step. It's like leading a horse to water.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, because you can't. I don't know how many. Tried telling people, hey, this is. You get some people go, but for the most part, and it's like the more steps you ask people to take,
1 minute?
the fewer. But fortunately, in Fresno, we do have some very dedicated people. The Pareto principle is a real thing,
Mm-hmm.
So people are fantastic. I just hope that we get.
Even if they were only in a support role.
Mhm.
Look, you don't have to lead on all this. We actually have a foundation of leaders. Not that we wouldn't welcome more, but we also
30
need more
seconds.
support people. And sometimes that's as simple as during a meeting, you make sure that a notice always goes out. For a candidate, maybe the minimum you could do is talk to your neighbors and your family. And all those matter.
10 seconds?
Ooh, a surprise.
The Guillermo Moreno Show on the best talk in town. 1550 KXEX. Write it down.
This is Eric Rollins, guest hosting for Guillermo Moreno. I hope you've enjoyed the ride as we wind down this last segment tonight. I always try, with my show, The Constitutionalist, here on KXEX 1550, I try to bring some hope and solutions. I try to inspire people to action. And so I'm going to bring that element to Guillermo's show. Not that he isn't one of the most intensely positive people I know. Just the fact that he's in the room generally brings up the mood of the room. So I really appreciate that, and I'm lucky to have a boss like that. I'm lucky to have this opportunity to try to fill those giant shoes. Speaking of ways to have people get involved, to become informed, to have a solution, you just brought up what Rose is doing.
Yeah.
What's the name of that organization? What is it they're actually doing?
Her group is called was Friends of Fresno County, and the bottom line is just making sure that it's another group that's trying to make sure that we've got election integrity, doing it from a different route, a little bit different angle, kind of focusing on voter rolls, basically citizens audit.
I thought it was pretty interesting how they approached it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got the voter rolls, and they're going through comparing data, comparing information, making phone calls, going door to door, following up. I've been helping out as much as I can, trying to get a bit more involved and helpful with that. As far as other ways to get involved, I mean, we've got a lot of different local leadership groups really trying to spearhead their own campaigns and issues. People can reach out to those, like your group with the Constitutionalist of California.
Absolutely. I love this group. I lead the Clovis chapter. We don't have a ton of rules like a lot of groups. It is more organic. Everybody gets their say. Sometimes that's difficult, but if you intensely believe in the Constitution and in people's rights, then everybody gets their say. Even if I think they're wrong, or even if it's sometimes I'm like, please, I just want to go home someday. And it's a long meeting. Nonetheless, I have to respect every one of those people. One of the things I'm most proud about with Constitutionalist is the percentage of people that are doers. They're going to an event. If they're not leading something, they're supporting something. Great American Revival. Ted, Constitutionalist member. Dollar Monthly. Janet Kelly, Constitutionalist for California member. Candidate forum that we had in Selma. That was put together by Constitutionalists. Medical freedom rallies. You can't go to one without seeing multiple Constitutionalists.
Yeah, huge credit though to they've been doing, especially Heidi and Chris.
Absolutely.
Really pushing that massive lawsuit, bringing That's a whole nother conversation, but I have the utmost respect.
They are bold fighters.
Oh, absolutely.
And you'd never have guessed it from Heidi.
No.
She's just sweet and nice as can be until a line got crossed and it was like they awakened this fighter.
You know, that's one of the things that I really see a lot in our county. We do have these pockets of devoted, strong fighters that aren't willing to just sit by. And, you know, we really are out here. And if people do want to get involved, be engaged, lots of opportunities, lots of events that are going on. I always recommend people go to board meetings, watch the board meetings, local leadership, saying, involved in some
Whichever type of
rallies.
board. City council, board of supervisors.
School boards.
School
We
boards.
talked about it earlier. And one of the things, too, that I really think is important to stress to people, I'm very optimistic about where we are right now. Far more optimistic than I was even several years ago. I remember 2017, I was thinking to myself, people don't get it. They're not going to get it. We are that frog in that pot.
I was in that pot.
Well,
It wasn't that I wasn't a conservative and didn't speak up, but I was not involved and I had zero clue about the power of local.
Right. And that's all I've seen for the last couple of years is more wake up, get involved, get engaged, have more questions, wanting to push back. And if you are not sure how to start, just start talking to neighbors and family. And I know for some people that sounds like a crazy proposition. Don't even go down that route. What I recommend, though, the most success I've had with trying to wake people up, slow, go easy. Don't try to force people to have conversations they don't want to have. Don't try to take them down routes too fast.
Talk about kitchen table issues,
Just
gas prices.
Yeah.
Everybody will talk to you.
Start out with the basic stuff and approach it from an angle of commonality where it's like, hey, I noticed this, or I heard this story yesterday. I'm not sure what to think. What do you think about it? Start sharing.
Right. Rather than tell them, ask them
about this. Have a genuine conversation, just a little bit at a time. Because I tell you, there's so many of these conversations that we're having today that I would not have ever expected to actually be able to have on air or talk to other people approaching the national stage on these issues. Just so many topics in such a short period of time, people have become aware. And so it's huge. People are actually involved and engaged. And that is a cornerstone of our country. Our nation is about civic engagement. So,
well, it used to be, and it's starting to become again.
Absolutely. I think we just went through a period of generally just taking things for granted, and then as things have gotten more difficult, people realize, oh, I do need to be involved. So, it's a great time to be alive. If you want to be involved, you want to fight, you feel it. There's lots of outlets, and love more support. It doesn't matter what your topic is, what your issue is. You've only got an hour or two a week that you can dedicate to it. Places to get plugged in.
I think if you will go whatever flavor of grassroots group, and it really doesn't matter. If you were to go out and meet like-minded people, and if you listen to my show, The Constitutionalist, I typically give you several events at the beginning of every show. And you talk to those people and you begin to realize the possibilities that are before you. There's not a right place. Get involved, get started.
Yep. Never a bad time either.
Absolutely. This is Eric Rollins, joined by Sean Burdine, and we had a great pleasure, and I have a big thank you to all the audience and to Guillermo Moreno for giving us this opportunity.
Tammy for stopping by.
And yes, it's always good to talk to Tammy. I think that's a wrap. Thank you.